Chapter 477. These words were very normal, but in Si Yakong's ears, they were like the sounds of nature. He immediately turned his head and asked in a trembling voice, "Run." Xiaoxia's words aren't false. His tone was one of complete disbelief. Zhang Xiaohua smiled faintly and nodded. "Does sect head Si think I'm joking?" No. Si Yakong was quite excited and hurriedly explained. This old man just didn't think that nephew would be so generous. You're even willing to give such an important thing to my weapon forging sect. Give? Zhang Xiaohua shook her head again and said, "Sect head Si overestimates my Beidou school. Not to mention that this 5 elements Dayan formation has been lost for thousands of years, and that my sect only obtained it under an extremely coincidental opportunity. Even my sect's cultivation methods and formations cannot be given away casually." Zhang Xiaohua looked at Valley Head Nye and smiled. "But if we get away like this, people will think that it's not real. They will also think that my Beidou school is rich and overbearing. Of course, we can't give it away for free. Even if this one were to give it away, the sect's elders would still punish this disciple. However, Uncle Si has the demeanor of an elder. You're not like some gangs who want to get something and say that it's theirs. They'll use the glorified name of taking it back and think of all kinds of dirty tricks. Just based on this, I'm willing to make a fair deal with sect head Si." Valley Head Nye said, "Of course. Nephew Run, Beidou school doesn't belong to you alone. This formation also doesn't belong to you alone. It's necessary to give a good explanation to the sect head. Don't you think so, big brother Si?" Si Yakong seemed to have woken up from a dream and immediately said, That's right. It's good that Beidou school is willing to pass this formation to my weapon forging sect. How can my sect snatch it away by force? Moreover, this 5 elements Dayan formation was passed down to my weapon forging sect by a senior expert thousands of years ago. Who knows? This senior expert might be from your Beidou school." Zhang Xiaohua laughed inwardly, but said in all seriousness, Uncle Si, if that's the case, then our 2 factions already have a history." Ingzhizhu immediately clapped his hands and continued, "That's great. Since you're related to the weaponsmith sect, then you're related to our Jade Foundation Alliance as well. That's great. No wonder nephew Ren looked so familiar. I'm going to faint." Zhang Xiaohua felt like vomiting blood. She thought to herself, "Do I look that simple?" Valley Master Nye glanced at Si Yakong and said in a low voice, "Nephew Run, I just don't know what your sect leader and elders want to exchange for this formation." Si Yakong also eagerly chimed in, "That's right, Nephew Run. When you went out, what did the elders in the sect say?" "This." Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment, then said, "The headmaster didn't make it clear. It's just that Beidou school hasn't been involved in the world for a long time, so we're not too clear about the market conditions of the Jianghu. We'll just take those precious things back home and report back. I think that Uncle Si is an elder, so you won't mistreat me, right?" "Of course. How could I let nephew Ren fail to report back?" Si Yakong hurriedly replied. With that, he took out a short sword and handed it over, saying, "Nephew Ren, take a look at this treasured sword. What do you think?" Zhang Xiaohua frowned, thinking to herself, "What do I need this treasured sword for? It's better to get a jade scroll. Even if it's useless, it's still good to give me 2 weapons that can be used in the immortal Tao. Oh, right, it's called a magic weapon in the general principles of weapon refinement." Zhang Xiaohua didn't want to brush off Si Yakong's face, so she casually took it. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's expression, Si Yakong already knew that she didn't like it very much. However, he thought that Zhang Xiaohua didn't know the value of this short sword, so he smiled and said, "Nephew Ren, it's better if you take out this short sword and take a look." Zhang Xiaohua took the short sword and looked at the somewhat old and worn scabbard. She already looked down on it from the bottom of her heart. Hearing Si Yakong's words, she casually took out the short sword. With a schwa sound, the short sword was out of the scabbard. Zhang Xiaohua stared at it and couldn't help but let out a "ee." She saw that the short sword was about the same length as the short sword used by the bronze-masked old man. The blade at the front of the hilt gave off a blue luster under the bright lights. The luster flowed along with the flickering lights like flowing water. Seeing this, Si Yakong smiled and said confidently, "The four famous swords in the pugilistic world, dragon breaking, wind slaying, gold cutting, and water breaking, each have their own masters. Our weapon forging sect can't compare to them. Although this jade water sword is unknown in the pugilistic world and can't be compared to the four famous swords, it has its own uniqueness that the other famous swords in the world don't have." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but use her divine sense to scan it. However, that jade water sword didn't give off the slightest fluctuation of vital energy. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but shake her head. Seeing this, Si Yakong laughed softly and said, "Nephew, run. Try to send the vital energy in your body into this short sword. Then you'll know how wonderful it is." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and smiled bitterly. The vital energy in her body wasn't the internal energy of martial arts. This vital energy wasn't vital energy. Even if she sent it into the short sword, what use would it be? Glancing at Si Yakong, Zhang Xiaohua still sent a wisp of vital energy into the jade water sword in her hand. That wisp of vital energy wasn't a big deal, but that jade-green water-like splendor suddenly rippled. Startled, Zhang Xiaohua sent another wisp of vital energy. At this moment, the tip of the short sword trembled, and a few wisps of sword light actually shot out. "Sword light!" Ingzhizhu cried out involuntarily. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly withdrew her vital energy. That jade water sword's light faded, and it returned to its previous tranquility. Si Yakong was also a little surprised. He cupped his hands and said, "Nephew, run. I didn't expect your internal energy to be so exquisite. I thought you could only force out a wisp of brilliance." Zhang Xiaohua flipped her hand to look at the short sword. She asked with interest, "Uncle Si, what's going on? This jade water sword was refined by your honorable sect?" Si Yakong looked at the jade water sword with a reluctant expression. He said, "Nephew Ren, you must know that our weapon forging sect and weapon forging sect can refine some weapons that can increase one's internal energy. These refining methods were all researched by a senior several thousand years ago. As for who this senior is, I won't tell you. The only thing I want to tell you is that this jade water sword is this senior's proud work. It can also be considered one of our weapon forging sect's cornerstone treasures." "So it's like that," Zhang Xiaohua muttered to herself. This short sword was indeed not bad, but she didn't seem to be able to use it. Although her own small sword couldn't see light, its power was extraordinary. Although the incomparably heavy sword wasn't sharp enough, it could still crush people to death. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua returned the jade water sword to Si Yakong. She said, "Master Si, this sword is your honorable sect's treasure. How can I take it away from you? Please take it back." How could Si Yakong be willing to take it back? He waved his hand and said, "As the ancients said, treasured swords are given to heroes. This sword should be kept by a sect that specializes in martial arts like your honorable sect. Fortunately, this jade water sword isn't very famous. If it were to be known by some experts, it might bring disaster to my weapon forging sect." Zhang Xiaohua knew that this was an excuse. The weapon forging sect made weapons. If it didn't have any good things, who would believe them? Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua still didn't say anything, Si Yakong was a little anxious. He turned his head and shouted at Tong Ba, "Quickly bring me my brocade pouch." When Tong Ba heard this, he hurriedly stood up and walked to the side. He brought over a pouch that was placed on the side. This pouch was different from the usual ones. It was made of a pitch-black material and was rectangular in shape. Si Yakong reached out to take it and led Zhang Xiaohua to an empty table. With a shake of his hand, he poured out the contents of the pouch onto the table. He said, "If Nephew Rin isn't satisfied, you can take whatever you like from this table. Take whatever you like." This sect master Si is quite generous. It seems he is determined to obtain the 5 elements dye formation. Zhang Xiaohua pondered a bit and thought, "If I don't pick anything, it would seem like I was being pretentious. Sai, let's see if there are any jade slips or something." The items in Si Yakong's pouch were very messy. It was scattered all over the table, but there were no jade slips. Zhang Xiaohua scanned it with her divine sense and couldn't help but frown. She pointed at 3 pitch-black sticks and asked, "Sect Master C, what are these?" Siakong also looked at the 3 short sticks strangely. After thinking for a long time, he hesitated and said, "These seem to be the handles of the 3 flags I found in the secret room last year. They were all covered in dust, so I casually took them out. How did they end up in my brocade pouch? Where did the flags go?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and asked, "My sect master likes some ancient jade items." "Oh, not the kind with exquisite carvings. As long as it's a jade pendant or jade piece, the older the better. If Sect Master C can give me a few pieces, I'll take them back and report back." "Jade pendant?" Siakong was a bit embarrassed and said, "I won't hide it from nephew. My weapon forging sect really doesn't have the kind of thing you're talking about. If it's a normal jade item, the sect does have some, but they're all a bit old and have exquisite carvings." "Is that so?" Zhang Xiaohua nodded slightly and was about to speak. Siakong suddenly slapped his forehead and said, "Oh, I remember now. I do have a strange thing here. I think your sect master will like it." After he finished speaking, he put his hand into his chest and was about to take it out, but there was some hesitation on his face. He looked at Valley Master Nya and gave him a look. Valley Master Nya understood and sent out the few disciples in the martial arts practice field. Seeing that the idle people had all left, Siakong said apologetically, "Nephew, please don't blame me. This thing is a bit strange. If more people know about it, it may be disadvantageous to both our sections." Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua immediately became spirited and asked, "Now, can Sect Master C take it out and take a look?" Siakong mysteriously took his hand out of his chest and held a small booklet in his hand. "A martial arts secret book?" Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled. What use did this thing have for her? Siakong shook his head and said, "Nephew, run, don't be anxious. Take a look first." As he spoke, he opened the booklet and handed it over. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and took the booklet. She lowered her head and looked at it. When she saw the contents of the booklet, she couldn't help but be shocked. Come, there are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 478. This was a booklet similar to the Carefree Heart Sutra. It was the same size, and the quality of the pages were the same. However, what surprised Zhang Xiaohua was that the booklet was completely white without any words at all. Zhang Xiaohua was greatly surprised and raised her head to look at Siakong. Siakong smiled and said, "Virtuous nephew, take a look at the cover." Zhang Xiaohua closed the booklet and saw that the cover of the booklet had 4 ancient words written on it. Wordless heavenly book. However, the word heaven was different. It was written in a flamboyant style, as if it was about to soar into the sky. Although the other 3 words were also very charming, their charm was much weaker. Could it be that the other 3 words were added later? Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense and carefully observed the booklet. Sure enough, there was a faint vital qi fluctuation on the booklet. It was actually a restriction of the immortal Tao. However, there was a slight flaw in the restriction where the word heaven was written on the cover, revealing the original heaven on the cover. The other 3 words were written on the cover by someone later. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Needless to say, this was obviously a secret manual that recorded some immortal cultivation technique. It might even be more precious than the Carefree Heart Sutra. At this time, Siakong explained, "Virtuous nephew, run. This is a mysterious, wordless heavenly book that has been passed down from generation to generation in my weapon forging sect. It has been more than 1,000 years since my generation. However, I have exhausted all methods and still have not been able to uncover the mystery within. I see that your sect's leader and elders like ancient jade pendants, so I think they must have some methods to decipher the secret of this heavenly book. I will give this heavenly book to your sect now. I only hope that if your sect's elders can decipher it, they will record a copy of the contents and send that copy to my weapon forging sect. What do you think?" "I see." Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's hesitation, Siakong said, I know that the textless heavenly book is of great importance. If it were to be leaked, it would bring great trouble to you. However, you don't have to worry, nephew Ren. Those who have nothing to do with it have already been cleared out by second brother Nya. The people who remain here will not reveal anything. The textless heavenly book has also been kept in our weapon forging sect for 1,000 years and has not been revealed to the public. In the future, the people of our Jade Foundation Alliance will definitely not mention anything about it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "That's right. Your sect senior is quite interesting. Although there's a heaven character in it, of all the other characters, he just had to add such a sensational name. If others knew about it, they would definitely think that it was some kind of peerless martial art manual. It would be strange if they didn't go to your weapon forging sect to steal it." Si Yakong nodded and said, "What you said makes sense. It's just that this book is extremely mysterious, and it's also completely empty. The seniors in the sect used this to detect the other 3 words. Zhang Xiaohua declined to comment and said, "What if the seniors in my Beidou school can't decipher the mystery?" Si Yakong smiled bitterly and said, "This heavenly book has been in our weapon forging sect for 1,000 years and still hasn't been deciphered. It's better to find a sect that we trust to decipher it for us." Nephew Ren's chivalrous heart must have been influenced by the seniors in your sect. Therefore, although I've never met the seniors in your sect, I'm still very confident in your beta school. Rather than letting this heavenly book gather dust in your weapon forging sect, why don't you give it to your seniors to decipher? Then Si Yakong paused and said, "If you can't decipher this heavenly book, then don't return to weapon forging sect for a day." The people who were listening looked at each other in dismay. Si Yakong was betting too much on this. Not to mention the contents of the wordless heavenly book. If Beidou School took this heavenly book and said that they couldn't decipher it, then wouldn't this heavenly book be given to them for nothing? When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was also moved. She thought for a moment and said, "Sect head C, since you're so confident in my Beidou School, then I'll make a decision for the seniors in my sect. Our 2 sects have a time limit of 20 years. If my Beidou School can't decipher it, then 20 years from now, we'll let this heavenly book return to weapon forging sect. What do you think?" Si Yakong's wrinkled face smiled like a tangerine peel. He stepped forward and pulled Zhang Xiaohua's hand and said, "Nephew Ren, how do you want this old man to thank your beta school? This is really—" Zhang Xiaohua was very embarrassed when Si Yakong pulled her hand. She said, "It's okay, sect head C. Everyone in my Beidou school is magnanimous. Even if the seniors know that I acted on my own accord, they won't blame me. They'll only reward me. Don't worry. That was because this guy was the only person in this illusory beta school. Who would blame him?" Si Yakong was very grateful. He pointed at the table full of things and said, "Nephew Run, you don't have to be so polite. Take everything on the table. Consider it a small token of appreciation for my weapon forging sect." How could Zhang Xiaohua be willing to take it? She repeatedly refused and said, "I'm not going back to beta school. What's the use of taking so many things? I still only want those 3 flagpoles." "You only want 3 flagpoles?" Si Yakong was very puzzled. However, when he thought about it, it was normal. Rinpochen was going to spread the incense cult in a while. It wouldn't be convenient to bring so many things. Thus, he said, "How about this, nephew Ren? This old man will leave these things first. When you're done spreading the incense cult, I'll invite you and your seniors to visit my weapon forging sect. This old man will prepare some gifts." Finished speaking, he placed the 3 pitch-black flagpoles in Zhang Xiaohua's hands. Seeing that the gifts were really too light, he chose a piece of material from the many items and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua. He said, "This is a rare refining material. Nephew Run, take it." Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua didn't hold back anymore. She reached out and took it. She looked around and smiled. "Sect head C, if it's possible, there's no harm in giving your brocade pouch to me. I see that this brocade pouch is also a good thing. I just happen to have a bag with me. I'll use it to store things." When Si Yakong heard this, he smiled and said, "Of course, nephew Ren has good eyes. This old man's brocade pouch is something that's impervious to water and fire. It's perfect for storing things." Finished speaking, he picked up the brocade pouch that was thrown on the ground and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua received it with a smile. She put the material and the 3 flagpoles inside. When Ye Qinyu saw this, she obediently found an ordinary bag and handed it over. Si Yakong took the bag and asked, "Nephew Rin, you really don't want to take more? This old man's brocade pouch is quite big. It's so light to put so little things inside." Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, "Next time I go to weapon forging sec with my seniors, I'll pick some good things." Si Yakong laughed loudly. He swept the things on the table into his pocket and handed it back to Tong Ba. When Valley Head Nye saw that Si Yakong's intentions were fulfilled, he was also happy. He had everyone return to the banquet and called out his disciples. He reorganized the banquet and ate until the moon was high and the stars were sparse. During the banquet that followed, Zhang Xiaohua didn't drink much. When she saw that it was getting late, she stood up and bid farewell. "Seniors, it's getting late. Forgive Nephew Ren for taking her leave. Uncle C, please stay in Rejuvenation Valley for a few more days and wait for Nephew Ren to finish writing the formation." When everyone saw this, they all stood up to send her off. Nye Qinyu also took the opportunity to leave the banquet and took Zhang Xiaohua out of the martial arts field. Zhang Xiaohua naturally wouldn't let Nye Qinyu take her back to the inner valley. She only made an appointment with Nye Qinyu for tomorrow's time. When she saw Nye Qinyu in her peach blossom nunnery, she turned around and went back to the pill room. Lighting the lantern, Zhang Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the prayer mat and took out the jade water sword from her bosom. Zhang Xiaohua had always thought that only the martial way's internal energy could be sent into a weapon and be magnified by the weapon. She didn't think that her own internal energy could also be sent into the jade water sword, and that it would produce some kind of sword ray. Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to scan the surroundings. When she didn't find any abnormalities, she held the jade water sword in her right hand and slowly sent her internal energy into the short sword. When she was in the martial arts field, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to truly let go of her hands and feet. She only released a little bit of her internal energy. When she saw that there was something strange about the short sword, she immediately stopped. Now that there was no one around, she wanted to see the true use of the short sword. As expected, when Zhang Xiaohua sent her internal energy into the short sword, the jade water sword suddenly emitted a blue light. At the tip of the sword, a so-called sword ray suddenly appeared. Its length was indeterminate, and it was constantly expanding and contracting. When Zhang Xiaohua saw this, she was overjoyed. She increased the amount of her internal energy, and the sword ray became longer. When Zhang Xiaohua sent in more than 60% of her internal energy, the sword ray and the length of the short sword were actually 2 times longer than an ordinary long sword. Zhang Xiaohua wanted to send in more internal energy, but the light of the short sword was scattered. It seemed that it had reached its limit. If she forced her internal energy, the short sword might collapse. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua maintained 60% of her internal energy and didn't send in any more. At this time, in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, there was clearly an exceptionally resplendent and dazzling long sword. Zhang Xiaohua was very satisfied with this result. She waved her right hand and casually made a few strokes with the sword. Looking at the stone table to the side, she had an idea. She waved her arm and lightly chopped at a small corner of the stone table. With a soft chi sound, the small corner fell to the ground as if she didn't put any strength into it. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She hurriedly went over to take a closer look. The stone table that was cut off was unusually smooth. The effect was even better than her own short sword. Seeing the sword ray of the short sword in her hand fluctuating according to her thoughts, Zhang Xiaohua was deep in thought. The short sword was an immortal weapon. If she fought with it in her hand, she would lose her advantage. Moreover, that incomplete sword technique was only useful with a flying sword. It wasn't appropriate to use it on an ordinary long sword. Although the short sword in her hand wasn't long enough, with the sword ray, it was longer than an ordinary long sword. When she found an exquisite sword technique in the future, it shouldn't be inferior to her short sword or long sword. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua's mind couldn't help but wander. She had just heard Si Yakong say that the four great divine swords of the pugilistic world each had a famous name. Even this short sword was called the Jade Water Sword. Her short sword and long sword didn't seem to have any names. What should I name it? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. This short sword wins by speed, under the control of divine sense. It's like a meteor streaking across the sky. It's just that the name meteor seems to be a bit cliché. That's right. I seem to have given this short sword to little Meng. It's best if there's the word Meng in the name. Hee. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel a trace of sweetness in her heart. At the same time, Nie Qinyu's face, which could be angry or happy at the same time, quietly appeared in her mind. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 479. In Zhu Meng. If it wants to chase after the speed of a dream, wouldn't it be even faster than a shooting star? Moreover, it has the intention of chasing after little dream, so it's her. Zhang Xiaohua gave her small sword an extremely romantic name, Zhu Meng. She couldn't help but feel excited. Striking while the iron was hot, she also gave her ugly long sword a name. Long swords were known for their heaviness, so of course they had to appear in the name. At this moment, the words Motionless Wisdom King suddenly appeared in Zhang Xiaohua's mind. Motionless Heavy Sword. Wisdom King Sword. None of them seemed to suit her. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua's eyes lit up. She thought of two words, Prajna, a great wisdom that surpassed everything. The long sword used its heaviness to defeat the enemy. It was a classic example of great skill not working. Any skill, any wisdom in front of this weight was just a paper tiger. It was an existence that surpassed all wisdom. Yes, it was the Prajna Heavy Sword. Zhang Xiaohua happily held the great wisdom sword in his left hand, while his right hand held the Jade Water Sword, which was constantly expanding and contracting with its jade green sword aura. He loved it so much that he could not bear to part with it. With a thought, Chasing Dream also flew into the sky of the pill room. In that instant, Zhang Xiaohua felt as if he was competing with all the heroes in the world. After admiring it for a while, Zhang Xiaohua put Zhu Ming and Jade Water into her money pouch. She then took out the 3 flagpoles that she had just obtained from sect head Si Yakong. Feeling the coldness of the flagpoles in her hand and the waves of vital energy emitted from them, Zhang Xiaohua's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. This was the only thing that sect head Si had thrown onto the table that emitted waves. How could Zhang Xiaohua not choose them? Looking at the 3 flagpoles, Zhang Xiaohua very naturally thought of the 3 talents formation in the auspicious 3 treasures hands. Wasn't it also formed by 3 array flags? The 3 talents flag formation wasn't a very special formation in the Immortal Tao. Even the 5 elements dying formation was a bit stronger than it. Presumably, there must have been many sects in the ancient times that understood this 3 talents flag formation. Therefore, it wasn't strange for weapon forging sect to have 3 extra flags. However, only 3 flagpoles were not enough. Where did the flags on the flagpoles go? Without any hesitation, Zhang Xiaohua picked up the brocade pouch that she had gotten from sect leader Si and placed the precious weapon refining material into the pouch. Then, she flipped the brocade pouch over and examined it carefully. She then took out her Jade Water Sword and used the tip of her sword to pick something on the brocade pouch. After a while, 3 pieces of black cloth bigger than her palm were cut off from the brocade pouch by Zhang Xiaohua. Then, she threw the brocade pouch with 3 holes to one side. With a smile on her face, she looked at the 3 triangular pieces of cloth in her hands that were made of an unknown material and were emitting waves of vital qi. Weren't they the flags? It was no wonder that sect leader Si Yakong couldn't remember where he threw the flags. It turned out that someone had used them as rags to mend his brocade pouch. If Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense hadn't sensed the waves coming from the brocade pouch that was thrown on the ground, who would have thought of this? Zhang Xiaohua picked up a flagpole with his left hand and a flag with his right. Looking at the flawless flag, Zhang Xiaohua knew that this small flag must have used up all of its energy for the people from the weapon forging sect to be able to pull it off the flagpole. He had to put the flag back on, but it wasn't something that could be done with needlework. Only by grasping the method to refine the flag would he be able to successfully refine the 3 flags. It was a pity that the general principles of weapon refining only had the basics of weapon refining and ordinary weapon refining techniques. Although the flags used for this level of flag formation were ordinary, it didn't cover anything. She could only look at the flags and sigh. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Didn't she still have the prize for her strength competition with Tong Ba tonight? She wondered if there was a method to refine weapons in the book. However, Zhang Xiaohua didn't have too much hope. The flags used for the 3-talent flag gate formation were weapons refined using the immortal Tao. At most, weapon forging sect was using martial arts techniques, so they wouldn't leave behind such records. Sure enough, after Zhang Xiaohua put everything into his money pouch, he took out the small booklet. Inside the booklet were all the refining techniques used by the weapon forging sect. The techniques and methods inside were exquisite and were things that Zhang Xiaohua had never seen before. However, if he wanted to use them to refine a small flag, it would be wishful thinking. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and placed the booklet on the table. It seemed that she could only place her last hope on the textless heavenly book. However, although there was a small hole in the cover of the heavenly book, the restriction inside was still very strong. It wasn't something that Zhang Xiaohua could break at this moment. Perhaps the dream-chasing sword could break this restriction, but the pages of the book were inside the restriction. If she wasn't careful, or there was a problem when breaking the restriction, the pages or the contents of the book would be damaged. Not only would Zhang Xiaohua not be able to obtain the complete contents of the heavenly book, she wouldn't be able to answer to weapon forging sect even 20 years later. Therefore, after hesitating for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua decided to study the weapon forging sect's booklet properly first. When she had time in the future, she would think about how to break this restriction. It was getting late. Zhang Xiaohua finished taking stock of her gains, then sat down cross-legged and began her routine cultivation. Of course, before she started cultivating, she didn't forget to set up a formation to seal off the pill room. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was cultivating in the outer valley of Rejuvenation Valley, where the Jade Foundation Alliance's sect masters had been discussing, they were all seated at their respective positions. They were sipping on fragrant tea and discussing. Valley Master Nye said, "Big Brother C, you've been a little rash today. During such an important period, you should have discussed this with me first. Let little you probe him first. If it doesn't work out, we'll think of something else. If Run Xiaoxia agrees, it won't be too late for us to discuss this further." Si Yakong cupped his fists and said, "Second Brother Nye, this is all my fault. I'll apologize first for not giving you a heads up first. It's just that you don't know this. I've thought of many possibilities during this period of time, but I was afraid that Ren Xiaoxia would reject me. That's why I had no choice but to take the risk. Think about it. If he had rejected little you earlier, how would I be able to open my mouth now?" Zhen Xian said, "It's a good thing that this Ren Xiaoyao is really generous. He's even willing to teach us such a wondrous formation. I really don't know how this Beidou school teaches its disciples." Ing Zhizhu, however, smiled and said he didn't suffer any losses at Beidou school. He's already gotten so many things. Ma Fuhu also said in surprise, "Big Brother C, it's one thing for you to give him the Jade Water Sword, but that textless heavenly book is a priceless treasure. We've never heard you talk about it before. Aren't you going too easy on them by giving it away so casually?" When the others heard this question, they also looked at Si Yakong. Si Yakong took a sip of tea and said with a bitter smile, "The textless heavenly book, the textless heavenly book. Just hearing this name sounds like a great disaster. How would I dare to reveal anything about it? Don't forget that the Misty School in Pingyang City is a major sect with tens of thousands of years of history. It was also because of some martial arts secret manual that the Fragrant Cult, the Great Forest Division, and the Righteous Alliance joined forces to exterminate it. If they knew that our weapon forging sect has the textless heavenly book, regardless of whether there are martial arts secret manuals in it, Wouldn't they have long come to kill us? Anyone of the three sects can easily wipe out our weapon-forging sect. Everyone nodded. Si Yakong continued, this textless heavenly book has been in our weapon-forging sect for thousands of years. Only the sect masters of each generation know about it. After so many years, no one has been able to decipher its secrets. No one knows what's recorded in it. I've been thinking about this all day, and it's like a fishbone stuck in my throat. I can't eat or sleep in peace. I'm afraid that this secret will be revealed one day and bring disaster to our weapon-forging sect. That's why I came up with this idea in a flash. Since we're going to pay a huge price in exchange for the formation, we might as well take out something that can shock people. Although this heavenly book is a huge treasure mountain, if we can't find the path to it, we can only think about it. Everyone nodded. Only Valleyhead Nya was a little dejected. Yes, you're giving this hot mountain of treasure to Beidou School as a big favor and promising to share it with them. However, at the same time, you're transferring a huge risk to Beidou School. During the 20 years that it would take to return the textless heavenly book, the Beidou School would have to risk being tracked down by various sects in the pugilistic world. Moreover, if the Beidou School didn't return the textless heavenly book after 20 years, as long as the weapon-forging sect slightly spread the news, wouldn't the Beidou School become the target of public criticism? Of course, Valleyhead Nya still believed in Si Yakong's character. Perhaps he wouldn't do such a thing, but he couldn't rule out the possibility that the others in the weapon-forging sect wouldn't have such thoughts. However, Valleyhead Nya also understood Si Yakong's intentions. There was no free meal in this world. If the Beidou School didn't have a diamond, then don't take on a porcelain job. Since you heard the name of this secret manual and still wanted to accept it, then you had to pay a certain amount of risk if you wanted to covet the martial arts secret manual inside. Thinking about it, benefits and risks coexisted. At the same time, Valleyhead Nya also understood the profound meaning behind Zhang Xiaohua's promise to return the heavenly book after 20 years. Seeing Si Yakong's somewhat proud expression and the gloating expressions of the others, Valleyhead Nya couldn't help but feel a little dejected. AI, this is the pugilistic world. Although there is family and warmth, there's also... Valleyhead Nya couldn't bear to continue thinking about it. The night passed silently. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua woke up as usual. After practicing the Big Dipper magical fist, she was about to stop when her heart suddenly moved. Like a sudden impulse, she practiced the Big Dipper magical fist again. As early as a few months ago, Zhang Xiaohua could only draw in 9 streams of cold to temper her bones. She knew that this was her limit and didn't try to practice it again. A few days ago, Zhang Xiaohua's accumulated strength suddenly broke through to the peak of the early stage of refining qi. Her cultivation had increased by a lot. Today, she tried it again, and sure enough, there was an unexpected gain. The 10th stream of cold actually came from her toes. Following the moves of the Big Dipper magical fist, she tempered all the bones in her body for the 10th time. The Big Dipper magical fist advanced again. As for what level the Big Dipper magical fist was at, Zhang Xiaohua was too lazy to calculate. As long as she had the cold stream to temper her bones, who cared what level it was? Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua secretly decided that in the future, she would practice the Big Dipper magical fist again after she tempered her bones. She didn't want to miss the time to level up her fist art. The 11th time of the Big Dipper magical fist didn't produce any cold stream. Zhang Xiaohua didn't care. After she stopped, she returned to the pill room and began to comprehend the rabbit talisman. Seeing that she needed to break more and more restrictions, if she didn't improve her cultivation of restrictions, she might delay things. Chapter 480. After a long time, the sun had already risen high in the sky. Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes and was somewhat puzzled. Normally, Nie Qinyu would have already skipped over at this time. Why is there no movement today? Will something happen? As Zhang Xiaohua pondered, she was about to release her divine sense. But at this moment, she heard footsteps outside. Just by hearing, Zhang Xiaohua knew that Nie Qinyu had arrived. However, her footsteps were somewhat slow today, as if she was extremely unhappy. Zhang Xiaohua got off the bed and walked over. Sure enough, she saw Nie Qinyu's somewhat hesitant figure in front of the pill room with a faint worried expression. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come out, Nie Qinyu forced a smile and said, "Big brother Rin, you're up?" Zhang Xiaohua was very curious and said, "Little you it's strange today. Why are you speaking so formally? I always wake up very early, and you know that. Did something happen?" Nie Qinyu opened her mouth and looked as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she took out the 4 treasures of the study from behind her and handed them to Zhang Xiaohua. "Big brother Ren, father asked me to bring these over. Yesterday, you already promised Uncle C that you would impart some 5 elements dyne formation to her. Father doesn't know how you'll impart it, but he's afraid that it'll be the same as the way you imparted to us. So he told me to bring these things over." Zhang Xiaohua didn't take them and only smiled. "That's right. However, just like last time, I'll still say it and you'll copy it." Upon hearing this, Nie Qinyu's expression changed greatly. "Big brother Run, I'm afraid that's not good. This is the secret manual of your beta school. It's fine if you exchanged it with the weapon forging sect. After all, they gave you a lot of benefits. If you let me copy it, wouldn't that be..." Nie Qinyu knew very well that she had kept a copy of the 5 elements dyne formation in her heart. She had indirectly given a copy of the formation to Rejuvenation Valley. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. I've only studied the 3-character classic for a few months. With my writing skills, I don't know when I'll be able to finish copying it. Besides, if sect leader C can't understand it, won't you blame me for keeping it to myself?" Nie Qinyu's heart was filled with warmth. She smiled and said, "My Rejuvenation Valley doesn't have any Jade Water Sword or Jade Blood Sword for you, and I don't have any heavenly book with words for you. Then give me the most precious thing in your Rejuvenation Valley," Zhang Xiaohua said casually. This, Nie Qinyu's face flushed red, but she didn't know what was the most precious thing in Rejuvenation Valley. As Zhang Xiaohua walked into the pill room and arranged the brush and ink, Nie Qinyu couldn't help but say, "Big brother Ren, you've been so generous to my Rejuvenation Valley. I have something to say to you." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "Little Yuer, when did you learn to be so refined?" "I asked you just now. If you have something to say, just say it. We can be considered as friends who have gone through life and death together." Hearing this, Nie Qinyu gritted her teeth and said resolutely, "Actually, big brother Run, it's enough that you obtained the Jade Water Sword last night. Why do you still want Uncle C's heavenly book? Uncle C is my family's elder, so I shouldn't talk about him behind his back. But at that time, I felt that there was something fishy about it. It was just that I couldn't interrupt or stop you under the circumstances. After thinking about it last night, I still felt that it was inappropriate." Thus, Nie Qinyu told Zhang Xiaohua about her thoughts last night in full detail. She actually had the same thoughts as the 6 sect leaders of the Jade Foundation Alliance. In the end, she said, "But oh, big brother Ren's final deadline of 20 years is indeed very clever. Firstly, it shows the generosity of your sect, and secondly, it gives weapon forging sects some peace of mind." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Since when had she thought so much about it? She just felt that she had already obtained a lot, so it was inappropriate to take another heavenly book from him. But seeing that Si Yakong was sincerely giving it to her, she set a deadline of 20 years. Actually, according to his plan, if everything went smoothly, he would be able to break the restriction in a few years and see the contents inside. This deadline was just a casual offer. However, Zhang Xiaohua was secretly amused. This weapon forging sect Si Yakong has really put in a lot of effort for the sake of his sect's interests. Not to mention how much preparation work he has done to obtain the 5 elements dyne formation. He has also racked his brains for this heavenly book. It's really hard on him. Unfortunately, this young master's beta school is a non-existent sect, so there's no way to find someone to take the blame. If this young master is unhappy, I'll find a place to hide and make you cry. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua didn't say anything, Nie Qinyu thought that she had touched on his heart and made him unhappy. Thus, she advised, "However, big brother Ren, you don't have to take it to heart. Although it's best not to accept this heavenly book, since you've accepted it, you should quickly find a time to return it to the sect and let the elders in the sect unravel its mysteries. Perhaps there really is a secret martial art manual that can be used to develop the sect. Even if you can't unravel it, you should return it to Weapon Forging Sect as soon as possible. Uncle C of Weapon Forging Sect doesn't seem to be the kind of treacherous person who would say one thing in front of others and another behind their backs. He was probably forced into a corner and came up with this idea on the spur of the moment. Soon after, she thought for a moment and said in a low voice, "Furthermore, with the friendship between my Rejuvenation Valley and Weapon Forging Sect, I don't think Uncle C will have any bad intentions towards you." Seeing Nie Qianyu's adorable bashfulness, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Little Yuer, if you hadn't said it so clearly, I really wouldn't have thought of so many things. I really don't know how to thank you." Sigh. As the ancient saying goes, don't have the heart to harm others, but don't have the heart to guard against others. I'm still too trusting of others. Nie Qianyu pursed her lips and smiled. Big Brother Run is kind-hearted and magnanimous, so the heavens will always take care of you. You just have to be a little more careful in the future. Then don't mention anything about thanking me again. Zhang Xiaohua laughed heartily and said, "All right, I won't mention it. I won't mention it. Then you don't have to give me the most precious thing in your Rejuvenation Valley. Consider my thanks." Hey, Nie Qianyu couldn't help but spit out. After telling Zhang Xiaohua the words in her heart, Nie Qianyu felt much more at ease. Thus, under Zhang Xiaohua's guidance, she began to copy the 5 elements Dine formation. The copying of the formation wasn't like the previous bewitching finger, which was ready-made from books and could be copied. However, this 5 elements Dine formation was imprinted in Zhang Xiaohua's mind. Moreover, there were many changes to the formation, so she couldn't explain it clearly in a short time. She could only explain it bit by bit and copy it bit by bit. In the next 20 days, Zhang Xiaohua and Nie Qianyu would copy the formation in the morning in the pill room. At noon, they would take the copied formation out of the inner valley. As for whether Nie Qianyu would copy another copy to keep in Rejuvenation Valley or directly give it to Si Yakong, it wasn't something that Zhang Xiaohua wanted to know. In the afternoon, he continued to ask Rejuvenation Valley to provide him with pill formulas and medicinal herbs so that he could familiarize himself with refining medicinal pills. Zhang Xiaohua led a carefree life, and her experience in refining medicinal pills steadily increased. However, Nie Qianyu was exhausted. On one hand, she had to copy the formation and understand it. On the other hand, she had to prepare pill formulas for Zhang Xiaohua. At first, she was quite happy. Not only could she learn the formation to protect Rejuvenation Valley, but she could also see Zhang Xiaohua every day. However, after a few days, she felt that she couldn't take it anymore. What kind of formation was the 5 elements Dine formation? Although it was a basic formation of the immortal Tao, Nie Qianyu, who didn't understand the immortal Tao at all, couldn't understand it. It was only because she was talented and exceptionally intelligent that she was able to understand a thing or two and memorize the formation under Zhang Xiaohua's painstaking efforts. Therefore, after a few days, the task of preparing the pill formulas for Zhang Xiaohua was personally taken over by Valley Head Nie. She had given Rejuvenation Valley the 5 elements Dine formation for no reason. Shouldn't you provide her with some convenience? If it weren't for the fact that it would be embarrassing, Valley Head Nie would have personally gone to the pill room to learn and copy the formation for Zhang Xiaohua. As for the other members of the Jade Foundation Alliance, apart from Si Yakong, who remained in Rejuvenation Valley, the others had all returned to their respective sections. Every day, Si Yakong would receive 1 or several pages of the 5 elements Dine formation. Looking at the familiar handwriting, Si Yakong smiled bitterly. He had put in so much effort and given so many treasures, but they couldn't even compare to a daughter. If he had known earlier, he would have given birth to a daughter of his own. Perhaps it was because he felt guilty or because he was afraid of delaying Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation. Si Yakong had never visited Zhang Xiaohua in the pill room. Zhang Xiaohua didn't mind either. She continued to copy the formation from her mind to her paper according to Nie Qianyu's progress every day. Although Si Yakong vaguely had the intention to scheme against Zhang Xiaohua didn't hide anything. She only explained the 5 elements Dayan formation as it was in the immortal Tao and combined it with her own martial cultivation, turning this 5 elements formation into a formation that could be used in the martial Tao. This formation was much more complicated than the one used by the 4 people in the arena that day. It took her more than 20 days to record it down. Today, Nie Qianyu put away her brush and sighed. "Brother Ren, let's stop here for today. I'm really tired. I've been copying this formation for more than 20 days, and I still haven't reached the end. I can only copy this much every day. Any more, and I'll have a splitting headache." Zhang Xiaohua smiled. "I was the same when I was learning that day. You've already done very well for those who are worse than you. Although the foundation of this formation is simple, the changes within it are very complicated. If we slack off, your Uncle C will be out of luck. After this period of learning, you should also know that if we don't fully grasp it and others find a flaw, the entire formation will collapse. It's better not to use the formation." Nie Qianyu nodded slightly. She also knew that not only Weapon Forging Sect, but Rejuvenation Valley was also learning this 5 elements formation. She had no choice but to give it her all. Zhang Xiaohua continued. "Anyway, the copying is more or less done. It'll be finished with a few more changes. It'll only take a day or 2. "That's right, Brother Ren. The day is approaching." If it was a few years ago, the incense cult would have already sent people to Rejuvenation Valley by now. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She frowned and said, "The incense cult always comes to Rejuvenation Valley on a fixed date. It can't be that they won't come this year, right? Calm. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading." Chapter 481. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's worried look, Nie Qianyu smiled and said, "Don't worry, Brother Ren. The fragrance cult doesn't come to Rejuvenation Valley on a fixed date, but the year is fixed. They should be coming this year. This has been a tradition for hundreds and thousands of years. Even if Rejuvenation Valley encounters a disaster, the fragrance cult will still come. There's no reason for them not to come this year." Zhang Xiaohua patted his chest and said, "Not bad. You gave me a big scare." The two of them chatted for a while more before Nie Qianyu brought the book back to the outer valley. As usual, Zhang Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the straw futon and comprehended the rabbit talisman. After such a long period of comprehension, Zhang Xiaohua had already comprehended more than half of the 365 talismans. Now, it was the 183rd talisman. However, Zhang Xiaohua had already comprehended the 183rd talisman for 3 days without any progress. After a long while, Zhang Xiaohua opened his eyes dispiritedly. Ever since he started comprehending the rabbit talisman, only the first few talismans were slightly difficult. Later on, he could comprehend a few of the simple ones in a day and one of the complex ones in 2 days. However, he had already comprehended half of the talismans for 4 days, and there was no sign of a breakthrough. Could it be that he had reached a bottleneck? After pondering for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua decided to put the rabbit talisman aside for the time being. After all, there were still many things that he needed to cultivate, such as restrictions and formations. He had yet to fully comprehend a portion of the Jade Scroll left behind by Venerable Fire Dragon. Perhaps it was because of these weak foundations that the rabbit talisman was in a predicament. However, after 20 days of cultivation, Zhang Xiaohua's restrictions had entered a new stage. He wanted to see if there were any restrictions on his body that needed to be broken. Zhang Xiaohua first took out the few Jade Scrolls left behind by Venerable Fire Dragon. With Zhang Xiaohua's current level, he could already see that the restrictions on these Jade Scrolls weren't too complicated. However, the method to break the restrictions was related to his cultivation. If he hadn't cultivated the Carefree Heart Sutra to the last stage of Qi refinement, he probably wouldn't be able to break the restrictions. It was better to hide them deep in the innermost part of his money pouch. After that, he immersed his divine sense into the Jade Scroll that he had obtained from the Ethereal Mountain Villa's library and carefully observed the restrictions within. After a while, Zhang Xiaohua thoughtfully withdrew his divine sense. The restrictions on this jade scroll was indeed marvelous. Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation was still lacking. However, he wasn't depressed. The more marvelous, the more precious it was. This must be an important technique. As long as he put effort into it, there would be a day when he would be able to break through it. As long as he worked, he would be able to break through it. Would be sooner or later. As long as he worked hard, there would be a days. His work, cultivation. This seems to be the second time I've encouraged myself like this while looking at this jade scroll. Zhang Xiaohua touched his nose and couldn't help but think to himself. Originally, there was a pair of jade bracelets in the money pouch. There was also a restriction on them that Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense couldn't penetrate. Since he still couldn't break the restrictions on the Misty School's jade scroll, Zhang Xiaohua was too lazy to take out the jade bracelets. He directly looked at the textless heavenly book. Ever since Nie Qianyu revealed Si Yikong's intentions that day, Zhang Xiaohua had been somewhat slacking off. Sometimes he thought that he might as well put the textless heavenly book in the money pouch. After a few years, he would return it to the weapon-casting sect, who would be able to break it for them. Sometimes he also thought that he didn't care. Since the weapon-casting sect let the beta school break it, he would just directly use violence. Who would care about the contents of the textless heavenly book? If it was broken, then it was broken. Who could guarantee that it would be completely good? Besides, even if it was broken, he could just use a similar restriction to cover it up. Would Sect Head C be able to find any clues? AI, this weapon-casting sect is really too much. Why didn't they give me some shabby jade scroll? It's not even as good as the weapon-casting sect. That Lu Meng even gave me the general principles of weapon casting. This general principles is really not bad. Although I've never truly entered the weapon casting sect, I've learned a lot from this general principles. It's a pity that there's no specific refining method. Even if I have the flagpole and small flag of the tripartite flag array, I can't refine it. It's also a pity that Tong Ba gave me the refining method. It's only a martial cultivation method. Although there are a lot of things I can learn from it, it's still an unorthodox method. I can't use it. AI, I should think of a way to get some sort of refining jade scroll. Zhang Xiaohua was still a bit hesitant as she tossed the textless heavenly book up and down. After all, this was something that had been passed down in the weapon casting sect for many years. If she accidentally destroyed it, regardless of what the weapon casting sect would think, she would first be condemned by her own conscience. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua decisively grabbed the textless heavenly book and laughed loudly. Her divine sense entered the book like a waterfall. In that instant, Zhang Xiaohua had an epiphany. The path of immortality was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't advance, you would be pushed back. If you blindly hesitated, how could you still have the bearing of a Qi practitioner? Only forging ahead with determination was the correct path. If she was so overcautious and timid, she would be at a disadvantage. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense enveloped the entire heavenly book. She carefully examined the restrictions on the book. Apart from a slight flaw where the word Tian was written on the cover, everything else was flawless. Although the fluctuations of vital qi were somewhat weak, it was still incomparably firm in her divine sense. This was the first time that Zhang Xiaohua had seen the restrictions on the book. However, she had no doubt that if the vital qi of the restrictions was exhausted, the contents of the book would definitely disappear along with the restrictions. It definitely wouldn't appear just because the restrictions disappeared. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua was still rather glad about her choice. After observing for a long time with her divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and pondered for a long time. Then, she released her hand. The textless heavenly book abruptly floated in the air, as if an invisible arm was holding it up by Zhang Xiaohua. Then, Zhang Xiaohua made different hand seals in succession. With a wave of her fingers, she sent the hand seals into the heavenly book. Unfortunately, after a while, the hand seals were like clay oxen entering the sea. There was no reaction at all. The heavenly book was still quietly floating in the air, showing no reaction at all. With her eyes closed, Zhang Xiaohua's face remained calm, as if she had already expected such an outcome. Then, Zhang Xiaohua bit her lips slightly. Her right hand stopped moving, and her left hand paused for a moment. Immediately, she slowly made another set of hand seals. This hand seal was made extremely slowly. Her fingers moved slightly, as if there were tens of thousands of kilograms of weight hanging from her fingers. Furthermore, her fingers were far less agile than before. Needless to say, this was the restriction technique that Zhang Xiaohua had just comprehended. As the hand seals became more complicated, the sluggishness between Zhang Xiaohua's fingers gradually disappeared. What followed was the obscurity of the hand seals. After the hand seals were made, she reached out and inserted it into the heavenly book. The heavenly book trembled slightly. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. It seemed that there was some effect. Hence, she continued to make the next hand seal. However, her right hand still pinched her thumb and middle finger together and did not move. The second hand seal was still unfamiliar at first, then proficient at it. Zhang Xiaohua's body was already emitting traces of qi of heaven and earth. This was the genuine qi in her body that was affected by the hand seals. Because she was unfamiliar with it, it leaked out. Zhang Xiaohua continued to make 17 hand seals, all of which were extremely obscure. Moreover, a lot of qi of heaven and earth had already appeared around Zhang Xiaohua. The heavenly book that was floating in the air first trembled slightly, then trembled violently, and then emitted a faint blue light. The qi of heaven and earth around Zhang Xiaohua was all attracted to it, emitting a bright brilliance. It was very beautiful. As the hand seals were inserted, the blue light became more intense. When the 17th hand seal was inserted, the heavenly book almost became a blue ball of light. Zhang Xiaohua could see it clearly with her divine sense. She immediately made the last hand seal. This was a hand seal that required the cooperation of both hands. Zhang Xiaohua's right thumb and middle finger separated and her wrist turned nimbly. The fingers on both her left and right hands seemed to be dancing. It was abnormally lively, which was completely different from the previous 17 hand seals. After a moment, the last hand seal was completed. Zhang Xiaohua pursed her lips, a determined expression on her face. Her hands paused for a moment. Then she put both hands forward and inserted the hand seal into the heavenly book. When the heavenly book received the hand seal, it immediately emitted a bright blue light. It was abnormally dazzling. Although Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and used her divine sense to observe, she naturally closed her eyes again. It was only for a moment that the extremely brilliant blue light suddenly disappeared. A simple and unadorned book appeared in front of Zhang Xiaohua. Without opening her eyes, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over it. Just as her divine sense came into contact with the book, a strange change occurred. The book seemed to have a strong suction force that pulled Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense into it. As soon as her divine sense entered the book, she lost contact with Zhang Xiaohua. This book could actually absorb divine sense. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Her first reaction was to withdraw her divine sense. This was the first time she had encountered something that could absorb divine sense. How could she not be shocked? However, she only hesitated for a moment. In her essence of elixir, the golden light flashed, and the strong divine sense continued to be injected into the book. The book did not hold back and swallowed the divine sense like a whale drinking water. At the same time, Zhang Xiaohua also gritted her teeth. The essence of elixir in her Naiwen palace flashed repeatedly, and more divine sense was injected into the book as if it was free. At this moment, an even more mysterious scene appeared. As Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense poured in, the ancient book gradually came to life. Following the divine sense, the pages of the book automatically flipped. What was even more unbelievable was that as the pages of the book flipped, countless ancient characters suddenly flew out from the blank pages. They followed the direction of the divine sense and swarmed into Zhang Xiaohua's head. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua was completely stunned. He had read many jade slips, but he had never seen such a big scene. This weapon-casting sect's methods seemed to be too arrogant. He was like a country boy who had never seen the world. This was his first time entering Pingyang City. All Zhang Xiaohua could think of now was to channel all his consciousness into the scroll. He could not think of anything else. Gone. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 482. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know how much time had passed, but the ancient characters in the scroll were still flowing in endlessly, and Zhang Xiaohua already felt that his consciousness was about to be exhausted. Although Zhang Xiaohua now had God's guidance and wasn't afraid of the consumption of his consciousness, but if he didn't have the guidance of his consciousness, wouldn't these ancient texts that rushed into his mind backfire on him or harm the scroll? This was not something Zhang Xiaohua could know. Therefore, he could only muster his strength and pour in what little spiritual sense he had, hoping that he could complete the transmission of the text before his spiritual sense was exhausted. After a while, the number of characters floating in the air gradually decreased. It seemed that the transmission had reached the end. However, Zhang Xiaohua's spiritual sense was also exhausted. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and was about to withdraw his spiritual sense to deal with the sudden interruption of the transmission. At this moment, the golden array outside the essence of herbalism rotated and shot a ray of golden light into the core of the essence of herbalism. The essence of herbalism shook again and suddenly produced a ray of spiritual sense. Although this ray of spiritual sense was small, once it came out of the essence of herbalism, it made Zhang Xiaohua feel that it was dense. If Zhang Xiaohua's current spiritual sense was sparse air, then this ray of spiritual sense was a dense stream. The moment the spiritual sense left the Niwen Palace, it immediately entered the scroll. As the spiritual sense entered, the pages that had been slowly flipping suddenly sped up and flipped to the end in a few moments. The texts that were transmitted into Zhang Xiaohua's mind also intensified, and this sudden increase in input actually made Zhang Xiaohua feel a splitting headache. Fortunately, the transmission process had reached the end, and there was not much information transmitted in that instant. The pain disappeared in a flash. When Zhang Xiaohua came back to his senses, the ancient scroll had already closed and was quietly floating in the air. The blue brilliance had long disappeared, and it had returned to its previous appearance of the wordless heavenly book. Zhang Xiaohua patted her forehead and waved her hand. The wordless heavenly book fell into her hand. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the cover and then flipped through the book. It was still blank. Zhang Xiaohua wanted to use her divine sense to look at the restriction again. Unfortunately, the thief had left and the building was empty. She wanted to, but she was powerless. Zhang Xiaohua carefully placed the wordless heavenly book in her bosom. She did not check the words that had just entered her mind. She just looked down and recited the incantation for the second level of God's traction. She slowly rotated her Dan core to replenish the consumption of her divine sense. Although he had consumed all of his divine sense just now, the last wisp of divine sense that shot out from the elixir core had pointed out a path for Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation. The more divine sense there was, the better. Only the quality was truly good. Although Zhang Xiaohua had only sensed a small amount of it, he could faintly feel that it was equivalent to at least 20% of his divine sense. It seemed that this God's traction still needed more effort. It was not until the sun was about to set that Zhang Xiaohua slowly opened her eyes. She calmly looked around the pill room and stood up. In the morning, she had finished copying the 5 elements dye formation with Niechinyu. Niechinyu had left behind the pill formula and medicinal herbs that Zhang Xiaohua needed to refine in the afternoon. However, Zhang Xiaohua had spent the entire afternoon on the wordless heavenly book. How could she have the time to care about these medicinal herbs? The medicinal herbs that had been left and used for the entire afternoon were already a little wilted. However, when Zhang Xiaohua had deciphered the wordless heavenly book, a lot of heaven and earth essence qi had gushed out. The entire pill room was filled with a lot of heaven and earth essence qi. Although those medicinal herbs had already left the ground, the essence qi they contained had not dissipated too much. However, if they were to stay in this pill room for the night, they probably would not be able to be used tomorrow. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and put these medicinal herbs into the money bag. He had wanted to put these medicinal herbs into the jade box, but the jade box was too small and the medicinal herbs were too long. If he took them out tomorrow, he did not know what Nie Qinyu would ask. It was better to put them directly into the space of the money bag. It seemed that the essence qi inside was sufficient, so there should not be much change. After putting away the medicinal herbs, Zhang Xiaohua stepped out of the pill room and shook his head, which was still a little painful. The feeling of exhausting his divine sense and pouring in a huge amount of words was really uncomfortable. It seemed that when he read the jade slip in the future, he would have to pay more attention. From the transmission method of the wordless heavenly book, it could be seen that the Way of Immortals did not only record words in jade slips. In the future, if he encountered a strange restriction formation, it would be best to make some defenses for himself. Just now, if there had been a sudden attack from the book along with the words, he would have been flustered and might have been injured. Of course, there was the spirit guidance to repair his divine sense, but it was hard to say if there were other unknown attacks. Outside the pill room, it was dusk, and the weather was already hot. The air mixed with the smell of medicinal herbs blew in his face. Zhang Xiaohua took a deep breath. He liked the faint smell of medicinal herbs very much. Under the stone wall in the distance, although there were still many disciples going in and out of the pill room, it was much less than in the morning. Their busy faces were full of satisfied smiles. For some reason, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of his father and elder brother who were far away in the Guozhuang house. At this time, they should also be coming back from the fields outside the village, carrying hoes on their shoulders, or maybe with tobacco in their mouths, leisurely walking back home. In the small courtyard not far away, there should be smoke rising gradually. Maybe now there were 2 wisps of smoke rising. Mother, an unforgettable face appeared in front of his eyes. Thinking of the doting in his mother's eyes, thinking of his mother's expectations, Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously raised his head. The sun in the distance was about to set. Unconsciously, his heart was filled with warmth, and his head was no longer as painful as before. Facing the afterglow, he walked briskly towards the inner part of the valley. The shadow behind him was getting longer and longer. After turning a few winding paths, Zhang Xiaohua came in front of a medicinal garden. The plants here were all exquisite red. Strings of bright red flower buds were raised on slender stems and leaves. When the breeze blew, there were slight waves from one end to the other. Zhang Xiaohua picked up a clean, slightly raised piece of soil and sat down. It was just like when he was young, when he was tired from working in the Guozhuang house, sitting on the ridge of the fields. He casually pulled out an exquisite red flower from the medicinal garden. Holding it in his hand, he swayed it left and right, as if it was a dog's tail flower. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua's mood seemed to have returned to 10 years ago. It seemed that it had been a long time since he was so relaxed and lazy. Sitting there lazily, he let the wind blow through his hair and let the sun pass over his face. In the forest, not far away, birds were chirping. It was not until the setting sun took away the last ray of light in this world that peace gradually returned. The birds also returned to their nests to enjoy the warmth of the bird's nest. Zhang Xiaohua closed his eyes and didn't look at his surroundings. He also didn't release his consciousness. However, in this moment of tranquility, he seemed to understand everything around him. He saw it clearer than his eyes, and saw it more meticulously than his consciousness. It was as if he was this silence, and everything in this silence was him. The headache from overusing his consciousness and a large amount of characters rushing in seemed to gradually disappear at this moment. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was enjoying this beautiful scene, his brow suddenly furrowed. He felt that there seemed to be someone walking in his direction from the distance. Although he couldn't be sure, his heart was moved. Immediately after, he released his consciousness. Indeed, Valley Master Nie was slowly walking in his direction from several dozen feet away. He seemed to be searching for something as he walked. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile. In this rejuvenation valley, Apart from Elder Zhang and the others, the only person that Valley Master Nye would search for in this manner was probably himself. Looking at the direction he was looking in, it could only be himself. Sighing, Zhang Xiaohua stood up with the exquisite red in his hand. It was rare for him to have a moment of leisure, but he had finished enjoying it just like that. Looking at Valley Master Nye's appearance, something must have happened. Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved. Could it be that someone from the School of Fragrance had come? Counting the days, it should be about time. Thinking of his second brother whose whereabouts were unknown, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and quickly went to greet them. After walking for a while, she happened to meet Valley Master Nye. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua walk over, Valley Master Nye immediately stopped and said with a smile, "Virtuous nephew Ren, why aren't you refining pills and cultivating in the pill room today? You're actually in the mood to come enjoy the scenery in the valley?" Glancing at the exquisite red in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, he continued without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to speak. "My rejuvenation valley is like spring all year round. The scenery in the inner valley is exceptionally beautiful. This exquisite red is only one of the many places. If virtuous nephew likes it, Lily can take you around tomorrow." Zhang Xiaohua raised the exquisite red and looked at it with interest, saying, "Thank you for your concern, Uncle Nye. I've been copying formations all this time. Today, I've come out for a walk because Nameless was irritated. Playing with flowers and admiring the moon should be the business of scholars. Us Jianghu people can forget about it." Valley Master Nye was a bit embarrassed when he heard this and smiled. "Speaking of which, I still want to express my thanks to Virtuous Nephew. Also, I want to privately apologize to you on behalf of Boss C. Actually, although Boss C's actions were a bit rash, he did have some difficulties." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. "It's all difficulties. AI, forget it. Why bother? Only I can decipher this wordless heavenly book. No matter how many years it's in weapon forging sect, it'll still be a wordless heavenly book. In the end, it'll probably be like the other immortal inheritances and turn to dust. Although the spell I inserted into the scroll this afternoon and absorbed my own divine sense can't fix the flaw on the scroll's cover, it's already full of vitality. It shouldn't be a problem to store it for another 1,000 years." Thus, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and stopped Valley Master Nye from speaking, saying, "I have my own heart towards the bright moon. Why should I fear the bright moon shining on the ravine? There's no need for excessive explanations. My beta school has always kept its word. Once the elders in the school discover the secret, they will definitely tell weapon forging sect." Hearing this, Valley Master Nye's expression trembled, and he solemnly bowed deeply, saying, "Virtuous nephew is so righteous. I thank you on behalf of weapon forging sect." Zhang Xiaohua sighed slightly and shook her head. She also returned the bow and asked, "Did Valley Master Nye come here to find me?" Valley Master Nye nodded, saying, "That's right. It's because Virtuous Nephew has an agreement with my Rejuvenation Valley that I came to discuss it with Virtuous Nephew. Come, there are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading." Chapter 483. Zhang Xiaohua said with joy, "Could it be that the people from the fragrant religion are here today?" Valley Head Nye was stunned and shook his head. "Nephew Ren will be disappointed. It's not the people from the fragrant religion." Then he explained, "Counting the days, the people from the fragrant religion should be here. It's just that they don't come at a fixed time. Maybe tomorrow, maybe 10 days later." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "Then why is Uncle Nye looking for me?" Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's question, Valley Head Nye couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He rubbed his hands and said, "Hee, it's really been tiring for you these days. Every day, you have to teach Xiao Yu those complicated arrays. Now, you even forgot about your agreement with Elder Zhang." "Ayo, that's right." Zhang Xiaohua slapped her forehead. 10 days ago, she did make an agreement with Elder Zhang to help Rejuvenation Valley refine the Crimson Flame Pill. But because of the weapon forging sect, she had to copy the 5 elements dyne array every day and had long forgotten about it. If Valley Head Nye didn't remind her, Zhang Xiaohua really would have forgotten about it. Zhang Xiaohua quickly apologized. Valley Head Nye, I didn't do it on purpose. It's really that during this time, Valley Head Nye waved his hand and said, I know. Nephew Run has to copy with Xiao Yu every morning, refine pills in the afternoon, and cultivate at night. If it wasn't for Elder Zhang's repeated urging, the people from the fragrant religion will be here soon. They won't be here for long. If we wait for them to arrive, there won't be enough time. So, I have to disturb you. I want to ask, when can we start refining the pills? During this time, Zhang Xiaohua had been copying the array and refining the pills. It could be said that she had accumulated a lot of experience in refining pills and was more confident in refining the Crimson Flame pill. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua replied, Uncle Nye, I think Master C of the weapon forging sect is still waiting in the Outer Valley. This array can be copied in 2 days. How about this? I'll prepare in the next 2 days. Once the array is copied, we'll start immediately. What do you think? When Valley Master Nye heard this, he smiled and asked, Why don't you rest for a few days? It won't be too late to refine after that. Forget it. You've already rushed me here. Can I still rest? Zhang Xiaohua cursed inwardly and said, It's okay, it's okay. Actually, little you is the one who is copying. I'm just dictating. Little you should be the one who needs to rest. He then asked, I wonder if Elder Zhang has collected all the ingredients for the Crimson Flame pill. Valley Master Nye nodded and said, The ingredients for the Crimson Flame pill are all very rare. Elder Zhang was afraid that he wouldn't be able to refine them after collecting them, causing the medicinal effects to disappear, so he didn't dare to pick them. He has been guarding these medicinal herbs these past few years, afraid that the birds and beasts would damage them. Didn't Nephew also encounter Big White that day? Dubai weaves in and out of these medicinal herbs and protects them. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was overjoyed. She was really afraid that Elder Zhang would casually pick them and cause the chi of heaven and earth in the medicinal herbs to be lost. Then, the refined medicinal pills would be greatly reduced. Thus, she hurriedly instructed, Uncle Nye, please tell Elder Zhang to wait until I'm ready before picking them. At that time, it would be best if, when she said this, she originally wanted to say, It would be best if I want to pick them myself. These words clearly showed that she didn't trust Rejuvenation Valley and overestimated herself. She immediately changed her words and said, It would be best if Elder Zhang used a jade box or something similar to seal the medicinal herbs. What do you think? Valley Master Nye waved his hand and said, Nephew, you don't have to instruct me on this. Although Rejuvenation Valley isn't too particular when refining medicinal pills now, this is only refining ordinary things. For a medicinal pill as precious as the Crimson Flame pill, the medicinal herbs naturally have to be preserved using ancient methods. Nephew, please rest assured. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. Of course, even if Rejuvenation Valley didn't know how to refine medicinal pills of the immortal Tao, they would at least know the method of preserving medicinal herbs. Moreover, Elder Zhang had immersed himself in the study of medicinal herbs for many years. Even if he didn't know the methods of the immortal Tao, he was much better at picking medicinal herbs than her. Fortunately, she didn't say it out loud, otherwise she would be laughed at for no reason. Zhang Xiaohua said embarrassedly, That's good, that's good. Since they had discussed the important matter of Rejuvenation Valley, Valley Master Nye was very happy and said, Nephew, do you still want to walk around here? I'll call little you over. She also likes secluded valleys very much. Zhang Xiaohua was sweating profusely this time and repeatedly waved her hand, saying, Many thanks for Uncle Nye's good intentions, but Nephew has already wasted a lot of time. It's better to return to the pill room and cultivate. The path of martial arts is like sailing against the current. Nephew has been slow-witted since childhood and has been unable to make any progress in martial arts. Many of the martial brothers in the sect have higher cultivation than me. Nephew can only seize all the time to cultivate so that I won't be left further behind. This time, it was Valley Master Nye's turn to be speechless. He secretly said, This level of martial arts is still not ranked in the beta school. Who would believe it if I said it? However, Valley Master Nye still encouraged her. Nephew, you have such perseverance. Sooner or later, you will stand out among the Marshall brothers. Then, nephew, quickly return to the pill room to cultivate. This old man will quietly wait for the day when nephew reaches the peak. After he finished speaking, Valley Master Nye smiled and left. It was unknown whether he went to Elder Zhang's place or outside the valley. Zhang Xiaohua quietly stood for a while and released her divine sense. She didn't feel any discomfort like before. She was slightly happy. She made a hand sign and directly returned to the pill room. After setting up the formation, Zhang Xiaohua very naturally sat down cross-legged. And immortal cultivation is good. As long as you have a praying mat, you can even save on a bed. Zhang Xiaohua was like a naughty child who was about to open a toy box to see his new toy. He was a little impatient, a little nervous, and a little expectant. This was the textless heavenly book. The Carefree Heart Sutra had paved the way for him to reach the heavens. Now that the textless heavenly book had made such a grand entrance, what kind of heaven-defying techniques would it record? Just now, a large amount of ancient characters poured into Zhang Xiaohua's mind. He almost didn't have time to look at them and just threw them there. At this time, just as he closed his eyes and opened those characters in his mind, the first thing that came into his mind was the 4 ancient characters refining the world. Faint Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. This was the textless heavenly book of the refining sect? So this Tian was the Tian in Under the Heavens Ah. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although there was a Tian in the 2 titles, the textless heavenly book and refining the world were completely different. Not only were they different, they were simply heaven and earth. Out of 10,000 Jianghu people, there wouldn't be a single person who didn't have fantasies about this textless heavenly book. And out of these 10,000 people, perhaps only 10 people were interested in this refining the world. On one hand, Zhang Xiaohua secretly cursed the shamelessness of the refining sect's predecessors. On the other hand, he carefully organized the characters in his mind. He just so happened to be one of those 10 people who was the most anxious. The refining the world recorded a lot of things. That was what Zhang Xiaohua exchanged his entire divine sense for. If there was less, he would cry to death. Zhang Xiaohua only roughly organized it. Just by looking at the table of contents, he was wild with joy. This table of contents actually recorded the Shoot the Heavens Bow, Chaotic Sky Rod, and other immortal Tao weapons that he had never heard of before. There were also some Flag Gate Array, Bewitching Finger, Sharpstone Array, and other array tools. It must be the refining methods for these weapons and array tools. Looking at the back, as expected, there was only one sentence at the end of the book: refining all the magic tools under the heavens. What a big tone. No wonder it was called Refining the World, so this was the meaning. Zhang Xiaohua opened his eyes, rubbed his chin, and laughed as he thought. He now had the weapon refining outline and could learn the basics of weapon refining. This Refining the World recorded the refining methods for all the magic tools under the heavens. It was the perfect combination for Zhang Xiaohua to learn weapon refining. In an instant, Zhang Xiaohua's resentment towards the refining sect's head, Si Yakong, disappeared. Just thinking about it made him laugh. If sect head Si knew that he had given away the treasures for weapon refining to someone else, he wondered how furious he would be. But then, Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with worry. That 5 elements dying formation was just a formation, but it had made him busy for 20 days. This was the entire Refining the World. How much time would it take for him to completely copy it down? But if he didn't copy it down, how could he fulfill his promise? Just thinking about it made him scratch his head. However, there were still 20 years. He would think about it when the time came. Zhang Xiaohua was very good at comforting himself. Perhaps there would be a way when the time came. If it really didn't work, he would just return it to them and copy a few simple refining methods that could be used in martial arts for them. Thinking about the 3 broken flags in his money bag, Zhang Xiaohua first flipped through the cultivation of formation tools. After looking at it for a while, he nodded thoughtfully and pondered in his heart. Although the 3 flags of the 3-talent flag gate formation were not eye-catching, there were many things used in them. Many of them were things that Zhang Xiaohua had never heard of or heard of before. If Zhang Xiaohua had to start from scratch and refine them again, he wouldn't even think about it. Fortunately, this was a ready-made item. The flagpole and flag were all intact, but the formation on the flags had run out of vitality. He only needed to replenish vitality to repair the formation on the flags. Although Zhang Xiaohua had never done the work of repairing formation tools, he was not unfamiliar with formations. Moreover, in Refining the World, it was written clearly on how to repair the flags. He looked carefully. How could he not know how to do it? Seeing that it was still early, Zhang Xiaohua stood up and walked in front of the earth fire. He first took out the flagpole and flags, then turned on the earth fire. Zhang Xiaohua's face was serious as he formed a seal with both hands and sent it into the earth fire to control the flames. Then, with a wave of his hand, one of the flagpoles flew into the blue flames. Following that, he sent in a few more seals. When the fire broke through the formation, Zhang Xiaohua threw another flag into it. The flag rolled a few times in the flames, but it didn't burn. Instead, due to the rich vitality of heaven and earth in the earth fire, the vitality rushed into the flag and made the flag more distinct. Moreover, various talismans gradually appeared on the flag. Zhang Xiaohua knew that these talismans were the formation of the three-talent flag A formation. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian. Chapter 484. After the burning of the earth fire, the talisman on the flag became more visible. It was almost out of the flag, and the array on the flagpole also emerged from the dark texture. Zhang Xiaohua saw that the time was right, and the expression on her face became more serious. She took a deep breath, and the true qi in her body surged. Her hands followed the formula of refining the world, and her fingers flicked. She put the formula that she had just made into the two separated array tools. The small flag and the flagpole were attracted by the formula, and they gradually approached each other. As the distance between the two got closer, it seemed that there was a huge repulsive force between the two, and they faintly repelled each other. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but frown when she saw this. Refining the World did not describe such a situation, and it could only be encountered in real practice. However, Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry. She still put in different formulas step by step, and according to her own poor experience, she put in some formulas twice more. So, under the efforts of Zhang Xiaohua, the two things were getting closer and closer. When they were about to get close, Zhang Xiaohua's forehead was sweating. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but complain in her heart. Previously, she used the refining method to refine the jade pendant for protection. She felt that it was very easy, so she looked down on this refining method. During this period of time, she also used the earth fire and the pill furnace to refine medicinal pills. She dealt with the fire and felt that the way of alchemy was similar to the way of refining weapons. So, today she didn't consider carefully and directly use the refining method to repair the small flag. But the last moment when the two were about to merge, she couldn't do it. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and released her divine thought. She used the formula to control the earth fire slightly, trying to calm down. I just performed the formula and steps according to the record of refining the world. There is no mistake in it. Why can't I refine the two together? Zhang Xiaohua could not help but quickly recall the refining process just now. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Refining equipment and refining pills were both refining. Refining pills was refining the essence of herbs and building different essences together. It was very meticulous and meticulous. On the other hand, refining equipment was smelting materials of different qualities and adding them into a formation to form something completely new. It was very particular about smelting and embedding. The two refining methods looked the same, but there was a fundamental difference. The evolution of the heavenly Tao, the separation of yin and yang, and the creation of the five elements. Weren't refining pills and refining equipment the two sides of yin and yang? Zhang Xiaohua seemed to have realized something. He had always been refining pills, but he was much more careful and meticulous. It was not suitable for the pure yang way of refining weapons. Thinking about the boiling jade liquid when she refined the jade pendant, Zhang Xiaohua's mouth revealed a smile. Then, she forced all the true qi in her body into her fingers. She once again formed the formula. Slowly and rhythmically, she sent the formula into the earth fire. The two array weapons that could not be merged for a long time. As Zhang Xiaohua's formula was sent in, it was as if there was an invisible hand that pulled the two array weapons together. Suddenly, a white brilliance flashed. The flag and the flagpole finally merged together. The talismans on the two disappeared at the same time. Only a complete, small flag floated above the earth fire. Zhang Xiaohua let out a long breath. With a wave of her hand, the small flag floated into her hand. Zhang Xiaohua carefully looked at the intersection of the flag and the flagpole. She did not see any traces. She could not help but be amazed. Inwardly, she said, "This is the legendary flawless." After fiddling with it for a while, Zhang Xiaohua put the small flag into her purse. Although the time it took to refine the small flag was not long, the consumption of true qi was enormous. She had almost used up all the true qi in her body. She simply did not have any energy left to refine the other two. Zhang Xiaohua walked back to the praying mat. While walking, she sighed. In the past, compared to the martial artists, she always felt that she was more powerful than them. But now, in the afternoon, deciphering the refining the world consumed her divine sense. In the evening, she refined an array weapon. Oh, and it was only repairing an array weapon, but she used up all her true qi. Although there were no longer any immortals in this world, Zhang Xiaohua still felt very ashamed. Her cultivation base at the early stage of the refining qi stage was really not enough. She was still wholeheartedly thinking about finding the method of refining and preparing to show her skills to refine a handy magic tool. Looking at it now, it was almost an unattainable thing. Only when she reached the late stage of the refining qi stage or the legendary foundation establishment stage would it be possible. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua decided to take a good look at the refining principles first. She would put the refining the world in her purse. She would wait until her strength was enough to cultivate it. Sitting cross-legged on the dark green praying mat, although it was still early, Zhang Xiaohua already had no intention of comprehending the talisman or array. He was really too tired today. Taking out two primordial stones from his bosom, he closed his eyes and meditated. Silently, he operated the Worry-Free Heart Sutra to slowly replenish his consumed true qi. In the next 2 days, according to the original arrangement, Zhang Xiaohua imparted the remaining changes of the 5 elements Dian array to Nie Qinyu one by one. She recorded them in detail. Moreover, in the afternoon and evening, the remaining 2 small flags were repaired. Although the repair of these 3 small flags exhausted Zhang Xiaohua, it also improved her cultivation. Unexpectedly, it improved even more than when she refined pills. Zhang Xiaohua faintly understood that refining pills and refining tools were also cultivation methods. Similarly, they could also be used to cultivate great divine abilities. After obtaining the 5 elements Dian array, Si Yakong finally fulfilled one of his wishes. Looking at the detailed and complete array, he didn't dare to believe it. There were simply too many things inside, far beyond his imagination. It also far exceeded the records of the weapon-forging sect. For this reason, Si Yakong specially came to the pill room in the inner valley to express his gratitude to Zhang Xiaohua. Although Zhang Xiaohua didn't like being schemed against by others, she had received a lot of benefits from the weapon-forging sect. How could she just ignore them? Thus, she chatted happily with Si Yakong for a long time. She even promised to visit the weapon-forging sect again after she finished teaching the incense cult and returned to Beta School. Si Yakong was also very happy. He had always avoided meeting Zhang Xiaohua because he felt guilty. Today, when he saw that Zhang Xiaohua didn't pursue the matter and even gave him guidance on the application of the array, he didn't mention the textless heavenly book again. He even agreed to help Zhang Xiaohua search for rare and strange materials for refining tools. He even wanted to teach Zhang Xiaohua a few things on the spot. When Valley Master Nye saw this, the stone in his heart was finally put down. He knew that Zhang Xiaohua didn't take certain things to heart. On one side was his big brother whom he had known for many years, and on the other was a young hero whom the Rejuvenation Valley owed a great debt of gratitude to. He felt very uncomfortable being caught in the middle. After sending Si Yakong off, Valley Master Nye hurriedly returned and asked softly, "Virtuous nephew Run, the matter of the array has been completed. Do you?" Valley Master Nye blushed with shame. Who was the Valley Master of Rejuvenation Valley? He still had to wait for the other person to have time to refine a medicinal pill. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Uncle Nye, don't be impatient. I've also organized the pill recipe these past few days. It will be completed in half a day. How about this? Tomorrow morning, I'll ask Elder Zhang to pick the medicinal herbs for the Crimson Flame pill. I'll wait here respectfully. How about we open the cauldron and refine the pill together?" Valley Master Nye was overjoyed and was about to speak. But at this moment, Zhang Xiaohua said with a troubled expression, "There's one more thing that I have to tell you, Uncle Nye." Valley Master Nye was startled and said with a smile, "Virtuous nephew, if you have something to say, please say it. There's no need to worry." Zhang Xiaohua hesitated for a moment and said, "Uncle Nye, by right, you're not an outsider. I also learned many things about refining pills from Rejuvenation Valley. Refining the Crimson Flame pill is a rare opportunity for us alchemists. It's better to discuss and observe together, but..." Hearing this, Valley Master Nye's expression turned ugly. "That's right. You've learned Rejuvenation Valley's alchemy skills and used Rejuvenation Valley's medicinal herbs to refine medicinal pills. It seems like you don't want Rejuvenation Valley's Valley Master to observe from the side. Oh, I forgot. You've even asked Rejuvenation Valley's daughter to choose a pill room for you and study with you. In the end, you actually want to throw her aside. How could she accept it?" Seeing Valley Master Nye's ugly expression, Zhang Xiaohua said helplessly, "Uncle Nye should know my personality. If it weren't for the fact that I had no other choice, I wouldn't say such things. Some of the techniques used to refine the Crimson Flame pill were copied from the ancient pill refining technique scroll that I gave you last time. That technique has nothing to do with me passing it to Rejuvenation Valley. However, there are some other techniques that are secretly passed down from my beta school. I received instructions from the elders in the school and didn't dare to break the school rules. Please forgive me, Uncle Nye." Zhang Xiaohua spoke sincerely and mentioned the techniques used to refine the pill. Valley Master Nye's expression eased a little. What Zhang Xiaohua said was very reasonable. Ever since he started practicing that technique, he could already successfully refine simple pills. It could be seen that she didn't lie to him. One technique in the scroll could restore Rejuvenation Valley to its heyday as an ancient pill refining technique. The other techniques could be imagined. It was normal that she didn't allow him to observe. However, Valley Master Nye still didn't give up. He asked, "Nephew, I know your difficulties. However, refining the Crimson Flame pill is a grand occasion that Rejuvenation Valley hasn't had in thousands of years. If I don't watch from the side, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Also, Elder Zhang, at such an old age, protected these medicinal herbs for so many years. If he can't watch the refining of the pill with his own eyes, would he be able to rest in peace?" Oh my God, he even used the words "wouldn't rest in peace." Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and nodded. "I understand Uncle Nye's thoughts very well. How about this? The refining process will still be watched by everyone. However, if necessary, I would like to ask Uncle and Elder Zhang to wait outside the pill room for a moment. When I'm done, I'll invite the two of you in. How about that?" Valley Master Nye thought for a moment and said, "If that's the case, I feel that it's fine. I'll go back and ask Elder Zhang what he thinks." Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, "After all, I've put Uncle in a difficult position. Please understand." Valley Master Nye smiled bitterly. Not knowing the technique was just being passive. His every move was restricted by others. He originally wanted to use Rejuvenation Valley's resources to exchange for their secret pill refining techniques, but in the end, he could only watch from afar and couldn't touch the core. Chapter 485. Valley Head Nie's wishful thinking of exchanging resources for skills had failed, so he went out to discuss with Elder Zhang in disappointment. Zhang Xiaohua wasn't worried that Rejuvenation Valley wouldn't agree. The formula and refining method of the Crimson Flame Pill were clearly stated in the prescription. Now, Rejuvenation Valley's decoction method would definitely not succeed. Even if Valley Head Nie successfully imitated the vital energy she imparted to him, the success rate of refining the Crimson Flame Pill was only 30%. Although the conditions she proposed were harsh, it was just that they weren't allowed to watch some parts of the process. Not to mention that the entire process would improve Rejuvenation Valley's alchemy. Even the Crimson Flame Pill that was successfully refined in the end was something that Valley Head Nie and Elder Zhang coveted. How could Elder Zhang not agree? How could he not agree? It was recorded in Rejuvenation Valley's prescription that taking the Crimson Flame Pill in combination with Rejuvenation Valley's secret internal energy cultivation method could increase one's cultivation by 5 to 10 years. This was an absolutely fatal temptation to any Jianghu person. It was also the first medicinal pill that came to Elder Zhang's mind when he knew that Zhang Xiaohua could refine pills using the ancient method. And in Zhang Xiaohua's jade slip on immortal pills, another name for the Crimson Flame Pill was Meridian Nourishing Pill. Its effect was to nourish the meridians and expand the meridians. It wasn't considered a top-grade medicinal pill, and it wasn't even considered a middle-grade medicinal pill. Moreover, things like the Crimson Pearl Grass and the Bright Sun Grass weren't considered extremely rare medicinal herbs in ancient times. It was just that the chi of heaven and earth had drastically decreased, and many of these medicinal herbs had gone extinct, which showed the preciousness of this medicinal pill. When Valley Head Nie left the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua took out the jade slip. He had wanted to take a closer look at it a few days ago, but refining the small flag really took a lot of effort, which was why he kept delaying it. Zhang Xiaohua didn't plan to refine the Crimson Flame Pill from the start. He only wanted to refine the Meridian Soothing Pill according to the jade slip. After all, the method he used was the Immortal Tao's alchemy. If he really used the method of imitating true qi to refine the Crimson Flame Pill, it would be better to let Valley Master Nie refine it himself. Moreover, through this period of refining pills, Zhang Xiaohua had also discovered that although Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipe was based on the Martial Way's pill refinement method, there were still traces of the Immortal Tao's pill refinement method in its bones. Previously, all of his pills had been refined successfully using the Martial Way's method before using the Immortal Tao's method. Moreover, the latter's color and quality were several times better than the former's. This was also the main reason why he wanted to directly refine the Meridian Soothing Pill and not the Crimson Flame Pill. After carefully looking through the formula and refining process of the Meridian Soothing Pill, Zhang Xiaohua felt that this Meridian Soothing Pill was only slightly more complicated than the basic pill. The time spent in the middle was longer, but the other steps were more or less the same. There were only 2 more types of spells, so it shouldn't be too difficult for him. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua already had experience in refining small flags, so he didn't dare to underestimate things that he hadn't tried before. He could only guarantee the possibility of refining the pill from various aspects. After he finished looking through the jade slip, Zhang Xiaohua took out the formula and refining steps of the Crimson Flame Pill for reference. However, it was a Martial Way's alchemy method after all, and was much cruder. There were many places where it wasn't suitable and even felt that there were some errors. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head as he continued reading. But when he reached the end, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly frowned. Why do you think this is? It turned out that in the jade slip, the Meridian Soothing Pill was a fiery red pill the size of a soybean. But in the scroll, the Crimson Flame Pill was a brownish red pill the size of a thumb. The color and size of these pills were all different. So could they be the same pill? Could it be that the formulas of the two pills were different? Immediately, Zhang Xiaohua thought of the 100 Herbs Compendium. She hurriedly took out the thin jade slip and carefully searched for the herbs required for the Meridian Soothing Pill. As a low-level pill, the Meridian Soothing Pill had many ingredients. Other than the bright sun grass and crimson pearl grass, there were more than 10 other ingredients. Zhang Xiaohua looked through them one by one and memorized their names and appearances in her mind. Then, she compared them with the ingredients for the Crimson Flame Pill that she had just memorized. Other than the main ingredient, the other ingredients for the Meridian Soothing Pill were close to 10 other ingredients. Among them, there were close to 7 herbs that were similar to the ones for the Meridian Soothing Pill. Although their names were different, the effects and appearance of the herbs were very similar. Unsurprisingly, it should be the same type of herb. The other herbs were either different or did not exist. Zhang Xiaohua kept the jade slip and stroked her chin, thinking to herself. She did not need to think too hard to figure out that with the annihilation of the immortal Tao, the art of refining pills had also changed. The formula for the Meridian Soothing Pill might have been passed down, but some of the herbs in it were also extinct. When a martial arts alchemist obtained such a precious formula, he naturally wanted to refine it. Based on his own experience, he changed the herbs in it. As time passed, this formula had been refined by many experienced alchemists and was modified into the formula for the Crimson Flame Pill. The refining method was also almost completely changed. As for the difference in this pill, it was even easier to explain. The herbs were changed, and the refining method was also completely different. How could they be the same? However, Zhang Xiaohua still had some doubts. How could the Meridian Soothing Pill be smaller than the Crimson Flame Pill? Martial arts alchemy was obviously born out of the immortal Tao. How could the pill refined be better than the immortal Tao? Thus, another problem arose. If she refined the Meridian Soothing Pill, how could she explain the relationship between these pills and the Crimson Flame Pill? But then, Zhang Xiaohua laughed. She thought to herself, I'll just say that I failed in refining the pill. What else can I say? Anyway, it's my first time refining, so it's normal to fail. If I have extra time, I'll use the cauldron to refine the real Crimson Flame Pill. But then the chances of success will not be as good as the Meridian Soothing Pill. After making up her mind, Zhang Xiaohua did not try to make a last-minute effort. She took out the incantation for concealing her cultivation level from the god's guidance and continued her unfinished comprehension. Seeing that the people from the aroma cult were about to arrive, it would be best if she finished comprehending it before they arrived and concealed her immortal Tao cultivation level. If she was discovered, it would be very bad. The beginning of this incantation was very cryptic. Zhang Xiaohua tried to comprehend it several times and always felt like she had grasped something. But she just could not understand it and was stuck there. She did not make much progress. It was the same today. Zhang Xiaohua felt vexed. Just as she was about to get up and walk around the inner valley, a thought flashed through her mind like lightning. 2 days ago, when she had a splitting headache, she was resting beside Ling Long Hong in the inner valley. She did not release her divine sense, nor did she use any divine abilities. Why did she feel like she was one with her surroundings? Why was she able to sense Valley Master Nie's arrival? Didn't concealing her cultivation level mean that she had to hide her vital energy within her body and not let others see it? Wasn't this exactly the same feeling she had a few days ago? Following this train of thought, Zhang Xiaohua immediately thought of the Tao of Heaven. Everything in this world was under the Tao of Heaven and secretly followed the Tao of Heaven. Also, the last time she made a breakthrough, Nie Qinyu said that she looked more ordinary. Wasn't that the same reason? Zhang Xiaohua was suddenly enlightened. The Tao of Heaven was really the origin of all things. Not daring to delay any longer, Zhang Xiaohua put her comprehension of the Tao of Heaven together with the incantation. Not long after, the previous sluggishness actually loosened. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. She quickly sat down again and closed her eyes to comprehend. At the same time, in the inner valley, on one side of Zhang Xiaohua's pill room, Elder Zhang frowned. He was unusually angry and asked in a deep voice, Valley Master, did Ren Xiaoxiao really make such a request? Valley Master Nya helplessly said, "Yes, Elder Zhang. I've already said it 5 times. Don't ask anymore. Tell me, are we going to refine or not?" Elder Zhang was also in a difficult position. Of course, he made an agreement with Zhang Xiaohua to refine the Crimson Flame Pill. His purpose was to refine it together with Zhang Xiaohua. Not only could he observe the alchemy technique, he could also obtain the Crimson Flame Pill, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But when it came down to it, she didn't let him watch from the side. His wishful thinking had failed. How could he not be ashamed and angry? Forget it, I'll go find Ren Xiaoxia and ask. Ren Xiaoxia is loyal and righteous. How can he be so stingy? Elder Zhang finished speaking and was about to get up. Valley Master Nye grabbed him and said with a bitter smile, "Elder Zhang, do you think you know Ren Xiaoxia better than I do?" Elder Zhang looked at him and said, "Of course not. No matter what, he is still your future father-in-law in name. How can I compare to you?" Valley Master Nya hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Elder Zhang, please don't say that again. You'll make Ren Xiaoxia angry. He only lent a helping hand. We can't be unkind." Elder Zhang snorted disdainfully. "Forget it. If he didn't have some feelings for little you, would he have done this? You and I are both experienced people. Who doesn't understand?" Valley Master Nya looked at this elder who was much older than him and was really speechless. He only said, "With my understanding of Ren Xiaoxia, if it wasn't for the sect's special instructions, he wouldn't have refused like this." "That's right. Haven't you been urging Ren Xiaoxia to refine the Crimson Flame Pill? Do you know why I haven't told him?" Elder Zhang said unhappily, "How would I know? You've been evading me again and again. I don't even know where your elbow is leaning." Valley Master Nya smiled lightly and told him about the weapon forging sect. Of course, he didn't tell him about the textless heavenly book. The weapon forging sect's 5 elements formation. That brat Si Yakong actually stayed in the outer valley for so long just for this 5 elements formation. Let me think, I seem to have heard his master talk about this mysterious thing before. Could it be that Ren Xiaoxia just let little you copy it and impart the 5 element formation to our Rejuvenation Valley? Valley Master Nya also couldn't hide his excitement and said, "That's right. Tell me, if Ren Xiaoxia did this, how could I suspect anything else? It must be that Ren Xiaoxia has a reason that he can't let us know." Elder Zhang also nodded when he heard this. Not bad. The key is that he still wants to leave this Crimson Flame Pill for our Rejuvenation Valley. Even if we don't look at it, it's worth it. Then it's decided. Elder Zhang, tomorrow morning, I'll bring a few jade boxes stored in the valley, and we'll pick the ingredients for the Crimson Flame Pill. Okay, we'll do this tomorrow. Come and read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 486. The next day, Zhang Xiaohua still practiced the Big Dipper magical fist as before and didn't feel any difference. However, when she finished practicing the fist technique and was about to return to the pill room, she saw Valley Head Nya and Elder Zhang excitedly walking over from the inner valley. They were talking excitedly as they walked. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and looked at the sky that was blocked by the mountain wall. She was speechless. The sun seemed to have just risen from the east, and here we are still in darkness. You don't have to be in such a hurry to squeeze out labor. The chickens haven't even crowed yet. Cough, cough. I forgot that there are no chickens in the inner valley of Rejuvenation Valley. There are only the chirping of birds. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua standing in front of the pill room, Valley Head Nya quickly walked forward and cupped his hands. "Nephew Ren, you're up so early." Zhang Xiaohua returned the greeting and said, "I can't help it. I'm so tired that I can't sleep when the sun rises. I keep thinking about what I have to do today." Valley Head Nya chuckled and didn't reply. Elder Zhang raised the jade box in his hand and said, "No matter how early Xiao Xiao woke up today, he didn't wake up as early as Valley Head Nya and I. According to the records of Rejuvenation Valley, it's best to pick the herbs before the dew disappears. Therefore, the 2 of us woke up before the sun rises." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and said, "There's actually such a thing? How come I don't know? How many days have you been in the sect?" There's still many things you don't know. Elder Zhang mercilessly attacked. Valley Head, Nye said, "This is a rule passed down from an unknown era in Rejuvenation Valley. It's only passed down by word of mouth, and there aren't even any records. It's normal that nephew doesn't know." Zhang Xiaohua nodded, but he had a strange feeling in his heart. "That's right. I've read a lot of pill formulas and books, but I haven't studied them systematically after all. Many of the things I learned were pieced together. For example, I don't know anything about the secrets and tricks that are taught orally. And these minute things are often the key. It's the true knowledge that predecessors have obtained through practice." Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua had some thoughts, Valley Head Nye keenly asked, "Nephew Ren, is there something wrong with the picking of the herbs?" Zhang Xiaohua stared blankly for a moment, then said with a smile, "I only secretly learned a move from your Rejuvenation Valley. How could there be anything inappropriate? Let me take a look at the herbs first." It wasn't that Zhang Xiaohua didn't believe in Rejuvenation Valley skills, but she didn't do everything herself, so she felt uneasy. Sigh, she didn't seem like she was made to be a valley head. Elder Zhang understood and didn't say anything. He just handed over the jade box in his hand. Zhang Xiaohua took it and looked at it carefully. It was a jade box about the same size as hers, but it was white in color. At a glance, the quality of the jade couldn't be compared to hers. She used her divine sense to scan the jade box, but there was no fluctuation of vitality on it. Zhang Xiaohua was about to open it when she heard Valley Head Nye say, "Nephew, let's open it in the pill room. The herbs have already been picked from the ground. If we open it now, it will affect the medicinal properties." Valley Head Nye was considered an old expert in refining pills, but when it came to the Crimson Flame pill, a pill that had never been refined, he was still overly cautious. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "Uncle Nye's words are very reasonable. It won't be too late to open it when it's time to refine it." When the three of them arrived at the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua placed the jade box in her hand on the table in the groove and asked, "Uncle Nye, how many jade boxes like this do we still have in Rejuvenation Valley?" Valley Head Nye thought for a moment and said, "There are many more. They were refined with the help of the crafting sect and the crafting sect. However, that was many years ago. In recent years, Rejuvenation Valley has stopped refining high-level pills like the Crimson Flame pill." Then he hesitated for a moment and said, "If there is a need for high-level pills, we will mention it when the disciples of the Cult of Fragrance come to Rejuvenation Valley. We will also provide them with the corresponding rare herbs for them to refine and bring them back the next time they come." Zhang Xiaohua said curiously, "The Cult of Fragrance will also help refine pills like the Crimson Flame pill." Valley Head Nye laughed bitterly and said, "How is that possible? Nephew overestimates the generosity of the Cult of Fragrance. There are many high-level pills. Why would they refine pills like the Crimson Flame pill that can increase internal energy for us? It's just some other pills. Moreover," Valley Head Nye hesitated for a moment and then said, "I believe that the Cult of Fragrance also has methods of refining pills like Nephew's, but I don't see them passing it on to Rejuvenation Valley." Elder Zhang also said angrily, "If they could help refine the pills, us two old men wouldn't have to trouble Ren Xiaoxia." Zhang Xiaohua blushed a bit. She knew that he was a bit offended by her request yesterday. She cupped her hands and said, "The two elders have been very good to me. I have also studied at Rejuvenation Valley." Seeing this, Elder Zhang waved his hand and stopped Zhang Xiaohua, saying, "Ren Xiaoxia, don't say any more. This old man feels uncomfortable, but the rules of your sect cannot be violated. We will not make things difficult for Xiaoxia. However, it would be best if we could see the refining process for as long as possible. We should also leave some of the refined Crimson Flame pills to us." When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she laughed loudly and said, "Elder Zhang is right. When the pills are refined, I will only take 3 and leave the rest to Rejuvenation Valley. What do you think?" Elder Zhang then said, "If it's not 3, or if it's not 6? Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation, "If it's not 3, I won't take a single. If it's not 6, Rejuvenation Valley will keep 3." Valley Head Nya was about to speak when Elder Zhang said loudly, Rin Xiaoxia is straightforward. It's settled then. However, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, Elder Zhang, don't be in such a hurry. I also have a presumptuous request. Elder Zhang asked curiously, What else do you have to say? Didn't you say enough yesterday? Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and said, This one carefully studied the recipe for the Crimson Flame pill last night and discovered that refining the Crimson Flame pill doesn't require the entire stock of Crimson Flame grass and Crimson Pearl grass. Even half of the other ingredients will suffice. This one has a request, and that is to first refine the other half of the medicinal herbs. If it's successful, then we will divide it according to our discussion just now. I would like to ask Valley Head Nya and Elder Zhang to leave the ordinary medicinal herbs to this one. What do you think? This? Elder Zhang was a bit troubled. He looked at Valley Head Nya and didn't dare to make a decision on his own. Valley Head Nya frowned and said, And if the refinement fails? Zhang Xiaohua pursed her lips and said, Then this little nephew would be too ashamed to accept the remaining half. She then continued, This little nephew will attempt to refine the remaining half. Elder Zhang laughed loudly and said, Rin Xiaoxia has made a good plan and won't suffer a loss at all. You still want to use my Rejuvenation Valley's Crimson Flame Grass to refine the pill twice? Zhang Xiaohua didn't hold back and said with a smile, That's still better than the incense cult. They won't refine it for you at all. As the two spoke, Valley Head Nya had finished thinking and nodded. Dead things can't compare to living things. If Virtuous Nephew can refine the pill, what harm is there in giving the remaining medicinal herbs to Rejuvenation Valley? Furthermore, Virtuous Nephew doesn't need to have any mental baggage. Just refine as you please. Even if you fail twice, there's no harm. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and said, Uncle Nya, please don't worry about this. This little nephew still has some confidence and will not recklessly waste natural resources and let Elder Zhang's years of hard work go to waste. Oh, that's right. These jade boxes are also for this little nephew. Clang. When Valley Head Nya heard the last sentence, his figure staggered and he thought to himself, This guy's habits are just as little you said. Without waiting for Valley Head Nya to answer, Elder Zhang waved his hand and said, Whatever. There are many more of these things in Rejuvenation Valley. If you like them, there's no harm in having your future father-in-law give you a few more. This time, it was Zhang Xiaohua's turn to be speechless. After all the matters were discussed, Elder Zhang and Valley Head Nya placed their own jade boxes on the table so that Zhang Xiaohua could start the fire to refine the pill. Zhang Xiaohua hesitated slightly and walked forward. She took down the cauldron placed on top of the earth fire and placed the immortal cauldron that she had taken from Elder Zhang's pill room on top of it. She was about to open the mechanism and start the earth fire. Seeing this, Elder Zhang immediately stopped her. Rin Xiaoxia, do you want to use this strange cauldron to refine the pill? Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, Exactly, but I've tried this cauldron before. I can't control the temperature at all. How can I refine the pill? Elder Zhang, you don't know. A few days ago, I moved it from your place. When I had nothing to do, I blindly thought about it and happened to come across a technique of our sect that can control this cauldron very well. Moreover, the effect is much better than the original one. Therefore, I thought of using this technique to refine the important Crimson Flame pill. So that's how it is. This is the root cause of his different attitudes. Valley Head Nya and Elder Zhang both revealed an expression of sudden realization. No wonder they couldn't watch the entire process. The secret techniques of their sect were naturally forbidden from being spread to outsiders. When Zhang Xiaohua started the earth fire and heated up the cauldron, she stood there and didn't put in the medicine. Elder Zhang asked strangely, Rin Xiaoxia, quickly input inner energy to increase the temperature? Zhang Xiaohua looked at him and smiled without speaking. Valley Head Nya pulled his sleeve and said, Let's go, Elder Zhang. Let's go outside and wait for Rin Xiaoxia call us. I haven't put in medicine and you won't let me watch? Elder Zhang was depressed. Although he was depressed, they had already agreed. Elder Zhang could only stand up and follow Valley Head Nya out of the pill room. In her spiritual sense, she saw the two helplessly standing outside. Zhang Xiaohua could only apologize in her heart. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand, and the jade boxes on the table all opened their lids. The jade box containing the scarlet flame grass immediately overflowed with an unusually lively heaven-earth yuan qi. The jade box containing the crimson pearl grass overflowed with a gentle and tranquil heaven-earth yuan qi. The heaven-earth yuan qi of the other few medicinal herbs were slightly different, and the concentration was also different. Zhang Xiaohua memorized the positions of the few medicinal herbs and closed the lids of the jade boxes. Then, she lightly breathed in and formed a seal with both hands. She hit the cauldron and was about to refine the meridian soothing pill. Chapter 487. Valley Head Nia and Elder Zhang were standing outside the alchemy room with resentment. From time to time, they would turn back to see what Zhang Xiaohua was doing. However, they knew that this method was extremely shameless. It was just that their hearts were itching, and it was hard for them to control themselves. Inside the alchemy room, Zhang Xiaohua used the first few incantations into the alchemy furnace and the earth fire. When the temperature of the alchemy furnace rose, she waved her hand, and the jade box containing the scarlet fire grass opened. Then, with a move of her finger, the scarlet fire grass was split into two halves. Her right hand waved again, and half of the scarlet fire grass flew out of the jade box and into the alchemy furnace. At the same time, the jade box was closed. After the scarlet flame grass was thrown into the cauldron, it was refined into a fist-sized medicinal liquid not long after. It kept rolling in the cauldron, and thin wisps of smoke flew out from the medicinal liquid. These were the impurities in the medicinal liquid. Zhang Xiaohua knew that although the scarlet fire grass was a rare medicinal herb, it contained a lot of yuan qi. Correspondingly, because it had been growing for a long time, the yuan qi contained a lot of impurities. It was very difficult to refine it out. It was impossible for ordinary martial arts cauldrons to obtain pure scarlet fire grass liquid. Even if she refined it like this, it would take her a day and a night. Looking at the medicinal liquid in the alchemy furnace that kept shrinking and changing into various shapes, Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. In a while, Valley Henya and Elder Zhang would definitely come in to see. How would she explain to them that the medicinal liquid was floating in mid-air? After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua chuckled and started another incantation. The fist-sized medicinal liquid gradually turned into a pancake and slowly sank to the bottom of the alchemy furnace. It was just like the pancake that Gui Sufei had placed on the stove in the Guozhuang house. Sigh. In a moment of desperation, Zhang Xiaohua's mind was only filled with the pancake that her mother had placed in her bag when she left the Guozhuang house. Looking left and right at the alchemy furnace, there was nothing unusual. Zhang Xiaohua then walked to the entrance of the alchemy room. Just as she was about to greet them, she heard a strange voice outside. "Father, Elder Zhang, why are the two of you waiting outside the alchemy room? Where is Brother In? Is he not in the alchemy room? Wasn't that Nye Qinyu?" Elder Zhang's face was full of bitterness and hatred as he said, "Little you, you're finally here." Nye Qinyu asked curiously, "Elder Zhang, what are you talking about?" Little Yu has been helping Big Brother Rin transcribe for the past few days and is extremely tired. I want to have a good rest these few days, but Father said yesterday that he was going to refine the Crimson Flame pill today. I just woke up and immediately came over to help you guys. Following which, he smiled and said, Big Brother Rin has always been an early riser. He must have gone to the valley to cultivate. Let's wait for a while. Anyway, it's still early. Valley Hednya looked at his precious daughter and bitterly smiled. Yes, the time is still early, but there is no such thing as time to concoct dawn. Plus, picking the herbs should be done early. Ouch! Nye Qinyu covered her mouth and said, I forgot Daddy's instructions. The herbs must be picked before the dew disappears. However, she changed the topic and said with a smile, As the ancients said, theory must be combined with practice. I've only picked common herbs, so why would there be so many taboos? Then, she felt that something was wrong and asked, Didn't Daddy make an appointment with Big Brotherin? Big Brotherin should be in the pill room at this time. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua walked out of the pill room with a smile and said, "Little fishy Nya, you're here too?" Nye Qinyu smiled and said, "Good morning, Big Brother Ren. Why aren't you inviting us in? Father and Elder Zhang have already gathered the herbs and brought them here." "Ha ha ha!" Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "Then please come in." Valley Head Nya and Elder Zhang were pleasantly surprised. "We can go in now?" Zhang Xiaohua nodded slightly, and the two of them immediately strode forward, taking the lead to rush in. Nye Qinyu was puzzled, but she wasn't a talkative person. She accompanied Zhang Xiaohua into the pill room slowly. There was a faint medicinal fragrance in the pill room. It wasn't strong and was much fainter than the previously refined fasting pill, all-dispelling pill, and new snow pill. Seeing that Daddy and Elder Zhang didn't ask anything and directly rushed to the small pill furnace above the earth fire, Nye Qinyu couldn't help but ask in astonishment, "Big Brother Ren, you've already started refining pills?" Zhang Xiao nodded and said, "Yes, we've already started long before you came." But Nye Qinyu was about to ask something when she heard Elder Zhang call out, "Ren Xiaoxia, please come over." Zhang Xiaohua quickly walked over and smiled. "Elder Zhang, what's the problem?" Elder Zhang pointed at the puddle of medicinal liquid at the bottom of the pill furnace and asked, "Nephew, Ren doesn't use water to refine pills. Why is there so much water at the bottom of the pill furnace?" Zhang Xiaohua knew that using martial arts to refine pills had the same effect as using immortal arts to refine impurities. However, the refining method was too tyrannical and directly used fire to turn the impurities into ashes. At the same time, it also inevitably lost a lot of the essence within. However, immortal arts turned medicinal herbs into medicinal liquid and used a formation to protect it. This was the gentle way. Not only could it remove as many impurities as possible, it could also better retain the essence within. Rejuvenation Valley's water decoction method should also have this layer of meaning. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Elder Zhang, take a closer look. That's not water, but the juice of the scarlet firegrass. I didn't add anything else." Valley Head Nya was greatly shocked and said, "Nephew Ren, you can actually maintain the medicinal liquid in this state at such a high temperature and not turn it into air and fly out. How did you do it?" Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and said, "Uncle Nya, forgive me for not being able to answer this question." Valley Head Nya and Elder Zhang were both disappointed. They looked at each other and then focused on the puddle of liquid. At this time, Nye Qinyu also walked to the front of the pill furnace and stuck her head out to look at the situation inside. She thought of the question just now and said with a smile, "I started refining pills a long time ago, but when I came, Father..." Before she finished speaking, Valley Head Nya seemed to have realized something and suddenly raised his head to ask, "Nephew Ren, you just said that this juice is from the scarlet firegrass?" Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "Yes, Uncle Nya, is there a problem?" But in the pill recipe, didn't it clearly state that the scarlet firegrass and crimson pearlgrass have to be added together and that the two main medicinal properties have to be slowly refined? Valley Head Nya asked somewhat anxiously. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "Uncle Nya, don't worry. I have confidence. This scarlet firegrass juice still needs to be refined for a day and a night. I can only put the crimson pearl grass in at this time tomorrow." "What?" The three people at the side were all shocked and said in unison, "Just refining this scarlet firegrass takes a day and a night." Zhang Xiaohua suddenly remembered that the formula for the crimson flame pill did not specify the time needed to refine it. He had been busy with the matter of the array these past few days and had neglected this problem. The elixirs refined by Rejuvenation Valley were extremely ordinary, and the elixirs he had refined recently were at most a meal's worth of time. He had never refined an elixir as time-consuming as the Crimson Flame pill. Of course, it would be surprising if he said it out loud. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua explained, "Elder Zhang, Valley Master Nya. In the recipe for the Crimson Flame pill, it only states the steps to concoct the pill, but it doesn't state the specific time. The concoction method in my sect is different from the previous one. It emphasizes on the word gentle, which means to use a gentle flame to produce fine work. Therefore, the time taken is much longer. Nie Qinyu asked curiously, "Then Big Brother run. How long will it take?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's not done one by one. After a while, you can put the crimson pearl grass and the other herbs into the pill furnace. They will be refined together for a day and a night." "Oh, I see." The three people sighed. This was understandable. However, the next words shocked them again. However, after refining, the juice still needs to be nourished in the pill furnace for 13 days. Zhang Xiaohua said indifferently. This. The three people did not know what to say. Yes, the alchemy of the immortal Tao had long been lost. Although the alchemy of the martial Tao had the saying of pill nurturing, as time passed, this term was gradually forgotten. At this time, in Rejuvenation Valley, pill nurturing was nothing more than rolling the muddy medicinal dregs into a round ball. However, before they could react, Zhang Xiaohua said again, "I'm sorry, but I have to put in the crimson pearl grass. Please wait at the entrance of the pill room." Nie Qinyu was stunned and blurted out, "Big Brother in, just put in your medicine." "Haven't I seen you do it a dozen times? What's there to avoid?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at Valley Head Nye and said, "Little you, go out with Uncle Nye first and let him explain to you. This pill furnace needs to be filled quickly. There can't be any delay." When he said, "There can't be any delay," Valley Head Nye and Elder Zhang became anxious and pulled the clueless Nie Qinyu out of the pill room. After the three of them left, Zhang Xiaohua squinted her eyes and looked at the medicinal liquid in the pill furnace. She cast a spell, and the crimson pearl grass turned into a round ball and floated in the air. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the rolling medicinal liquid and waited for a while before adding half of the crimson pearl grass into it. The moment the crimson pearl grass entered the crimson pearl grass, there was a reaction. The spherical medicinal liquid suddenly expanded as if it was about to explode. Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry. She cast a spell with both hands, and her vital qi flowed freely into the spell. When the spell was cast into the medicinal liquid immediately rolled like a child's toy in the pill furnace. After a long while, it finally calmed down and floated quietly in the pill furnace. Zhang Xiaohua knew that although it looked peaceful, the fire-attributed crimson pearl grass and the water-attributed crimson pearl grass were quietly fusing in the medicinal liquid, reinforcing and restraining each other. However, the sphere was the original form of the medicinal liquid. She did not know if changing it to a pancake shape would affect the fusion of the two main ingredients. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense and observed the changes in the medicinal liquid. She then cast a spell and slowly sank the medicinal liquid to the bottom, changing it to a pancake shape. Fortunately, although the external shape of the medicinal liquid had changed, the internal fusion was still the same. There were no other changes because of the external shape. Zhang Xiaohua spread out the medicinal liquid and almost touched the sweat on her forehead. Was there anyone in the immortal Tao who could refine pills like her? Zong Yi, calm, and read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 488. Outside the alchemy room, Valley Head Nye had already told Nie Qinyu about Zhang Xiaohua's unreasonable request. Nie Qinyu, on the contrary, was not as shocked and surprised as Elder Zhang. She had followed Zhang Xiaohua all the way back to Don't Worry City and found too many strange things about Zhang Xiaohua. Although Zhang Xiaohua tried to cover it up, the three of them were together every day, and Nie Qinyu was very concerned about Zhang Xiaohua's actions. Even if Zhang Xiaohua frowned or made a special expression, Nie Qinyu would try her best to guess. How could she not see some clues? However, Nie Qinyu was very smart. She had always seen it with her eyes, but never remembered it in her heart, let alone tell Little Orange. Now that she heard her father's words, she only nodded slightly and looked towards the alchemy room. She said worriedly, "Will Big Brother be okay? He has to refine for 14 days. Can he bear it alone?" Elder Zhang's eyes widened as he looked at this little girl. He shook his head and sympathetically said to Valley Head Nya, "Handsome Nya, oh handsome Nya, you've suffered a great loss. This girl's personality is biased towards outsiders. You've given birth to 3 daughters in a row and raised them until now, but none of them thought about you. What can you do? What can you do?" Nye Chinyu covered her mouth and laughed. "It's still better than some elders who have no children." Valley Head Nye scolded, "Little you, don't be rude." Elder Zhang did not care and said, "That depends on how you think. If you don't think about your own father like you, it's useless to have you." Nye Chinyu said seriously, "Elder Zhang, this has nothing to do with who is biased. I just feel that Big Brotherin must have his reasons for doing this. There's no need to force him." How could Elder Zhang not understand this logic? He had also thought it through earlier. However, when he saw that the other party was mysteriously refining pills in the pill room while he waited bitterly outside, anyone would involuntarily feel a little resentment. This was why he had repeatedly vented it. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua had already walked out. When he heard the conversation between Nye Chinyu and Elder Zhang, he could only sigh in his heart. Little Fishy was so concerned about him. She supported all of his decisions without reservation. She did not ask the reason for his actions at all, nor did she complain about not allowing him to watch. She was only worried about how hard it would be for him to continuously refine pills. This kind of care, sigh, Zhang Xiaohua himself also had an indescribable feeling in his heart. If he was not moved at all, even his own heels would not believe it. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua appear at the entrance of the alchemy room, Valley Master Nye and Elder Zhang's faces lit up. They passed by each other and rushed inside. Their figures were graceful and their movements were swift. There was nothing to say. Only Nye Chinyu stood there motionless. She said uneasily, "Big Brother Run, I didn't expect refining this crimson flame pill to be so troublesome and to trouble you for an entire 14 days. Nye Chinyu moved her lips and continued, "I thank Big Brother Ren on behalf of Rejuvenation Valley." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and looked at this girl who was not very beautiful. He said softly, "Little you're treating me like an outsider. I used your Rejuvenation Valley's alchemy room and used your Rejuvenation Valley's medicinal herbs to cultivate my own alchemy skills. In the end, I still have to share some of the pills refined. No matter what, I'm taking advantage of you. Should I also salute you and thank Rejuvenation Valley?" Nye Chinyu spat and said, "Then why don't you bow and thank me? What kind of stupid rules are you making to make Father and Elder Zhang depressed?" Zhang Xiaohua did not explain and said, "Let's go and take a look. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me." When Nye Chinyu heard this, her heart felt warm. She nodded and followed Zhang Xiaohua into the alchemy room. Inside the alchemy room and inside the alchemy furnace, there were no changes compared to before. The only difference was that the temperature of the earth fire was much higher. Valley Master Nye and Elder Zhang stared at the big cake but could not see anything. It was just some medicinal juice that was churning inside with a gulu-gulu sound. It was no different from the decoction of Rejuvenation Valley's pills. The only difference was that the pool of medicinal liquid was much smaller and appeared very strange. Nye Chinyu was even worse. She looked at it for a long time without saying anything. Her face was full of confusion. Indeed, this was very different from the alchemy techniques that she had learned. It almost subverted her previous understanding. However, her eyes soon became clear, and there was a kind of fervent expression. She whispered, "Big Brother Run, I don't know if my question is appropriate. If it's not, just pretend that I didn't say anything." Zhang Xiaohua was very puzzled. Didn't he just say that if she had any questions, she could ask? Why was she still hesitating now? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "Little just say it. I definitely won't blame you." Nye Chinyu said somewhat embarrassedly, "This alchemy technique, can I learn it?" "That's right." Valley Master Nye and Elder Zhang's eyes lit up. "Of course, if you don't let us see, can you let Nye Chinyu enter beta school to learn this alchemy technique?" Zhang Xiaohua was also stunned. He never thought that Nye Chinyu would ask such a question that could solve all the problems. This little girl's brain was not covered. There was indeed something different about it. Elder Zhang blinked at Valley Master Nye and hinted, You're not bad and your daughter is not bad. Look at her ambiguous relationship with this boy. Maybe it will work out. Why don't you quickly add fuel to the fire? Valley Master Nye saw that Zhang Xiaohua did not immediately refuse. Instead, he was thinking about it. He hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Nephew, run. Lil Yu's aptitude is not good. She has not been able to practice martial arts and has not joined other sections. She has only practiced some of the martial arts passed down in my Rejuvenation Valley. She has not achieved a small success. If it's possible, can you put in a few good words in front of your sex chief?" And then he tilted his head and looked at the burning earth fire. He gritted his teeth and said, "If you can learn a little self-defense technique or this alchemy technique, my Rejuvenation Valley will be very grateful." Zhang Xiaohua was somewhat at a loss. He had never thought of passing this immortal cultivation technique to others, especially in this environment where there was no rich qi of heaven and earth. His own cultivation was also very accidental. He had gone through lightning to temper the first strand of vital qi in his body. Although the qi of heaven and earth in Rejuvenation Valley was much more than in the medicinal field of Huanxi Manor, it was still far from the requirements of the Carefree Heart Sutra. Even if he taught the Carefree Heart Sutra to Nye Qianyu, it was almost impossible for her to succeed in practicing it. Taking a step back, even if Nye Qianyu could learn it without a primordial stone like his Crouching Ox Stone, she would not be able to advance beyond the first level of qi refining, let alone practice the technique. Sigh. Nye Qianyu's request was really a headache. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was still silent, Valley Head Nye said, "Nephew, run. It should be inevitable that Beidou School and Rejuvenation Valley will form an alliance. I've already told you about this before. If you return to the sect and inform the sect leader, he will probably know a little about the Yuli Alliance. He will still give us face. Even if you can't learn such a profound technique, I think it's still possible to enter Beidou School as a disciple." Valley Head Nye's few good speculations left Zhang Xiaohua speechless. Nonsense, he was the only one in Beidou School. Oh, and that nephew of his, Zhang Bairen, who had just passed his 100th day, how was he supposed to answer? Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was not replying for a long time, Nye Qianyu rolled her eyes and said pitifully, "Big brother Ren, are you really not going to show mercy to girls? I'm already begging you so bitterly, and you're not even going to answer me?" Hearing such a soft, pleading voice, Zhang Xiaohua was sweating profusely. He hurriedly said, "Stop, stop, hurry up and stop." Nye Qianyu's face was full of pride. She smiled and said, "What does Big Brother Ren say?" Zhang Xiaohua pretended to be disdainful and said, "Valley Head Nye is here. You can't pretend to be pitiful. I haven't seen you act coquettishly all the way here. Now that you've done this, I'm covered in goosebumps." Then he shrugged and said, "Little Yuer's aptitude for martial arts isn't good, and she's already past the best age to practice martial arts. It's really difficult for her to have any achievements in martial arts. Moreover, the sect has its own people in charge of accepting disciples. How can I interfere?" But when he saw Nye Qianyu's aggrieved look, he couldn't help but think, the Carefree Heart Sutra is the Misty School's Qi cultivation method. If it's taught to outsiders, it's best to ask the people in the Misty School. But now that the Misty School has encountered such an unforeseen event, I can only act when I return to the incense cult. In fact, he neglected the fact that he had already given the Carefree Heart Sutra to his sister-in-law so that she could teach it to Zhang Bairen. At that time, did he consider the opinions of the Misty School? Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua added, "Even if I want to greet the elders in the sect, it will have to wait until I return from the incense cult." Nye Qianyu was a little impulsive and said it without thinking. When she heard Zhang Xiaohua's initial rejection, she regretted saying it out loud. She knew it was impossible, so why did she say it out loud and make others look down on her? But when she heard the last sentence, she was ecstatic. She had always been eager to excel, but her body was weak, and she couldn't practice martial arts well. It had always been a pity. Zhang Xiaohua wasn't much older than her, but her martial arts cultivation was ridiculously high. Presumably, the Beidou School had its own unique way of teaching disciples. If she could enter the Beidou school, perhaps thinking about it made her feel warm, and she couldn't help but say in surprise, "Big brother run, don't lie to me." Just like Nie Qianyu. After saying the last sentence, Zhang Xiaohua regretted it. Wasn't she looking for trouble? However, looking at Nie Qianyu's surprise and thinking about how good she was to her, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh and say, "I'm not lying. It's just that I'm not confident, so I can't promise you casually." Nie Qianyu smiled and said, "As long as Big Brother agrees, I'll be happy whether it succeeds or not. Who knows? I might even become your little junior sister." Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and said, "In your dreams. You'll probably have to call me Martial Uncle." Nie Qianyu looked disappointed and said anxiously, "That can't be, Big Brotherin. Is that really the case? What do you think?" Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. Chapter 489. When Nie Qianyu saw Zhang Xiaohua acting like this, her face was filled with anger. Just as she was about to speak, Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, I forgot about refining pills. Could the three of you please leave for a moment and come back in after I'm done?" Nie Qianyu had no choice but to follow Valley Head Nie and Elder Zhang out of the pill room. As soon as they left the pill room, Elder Zhang gave Nie Qianyu a thumbs up and said, "Little you is really smart. You actually thought of becoming a disciple. This old man never thought of this." He then said to Valley Head Nie, "Valley Head, now you know the benefits of having a daughter. You were able to get this mysterious pill refining method to Rejuvenation Valley without any effort." Valley Head Nie shook his head and said, "Elder Zhang's thinking is too simple. Even if little Yu enters Beidou school, let's not talk about how long it will take her to reach Nephew Ren's level. Besides, if she becomes a disciple, she has to follow their rules. Whether or not she can refine pills for us is another matter. It's better not to have too much hope." How could Elder Zhang not know? He was just joking. Within the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua was concentrating on looking at the medicinal liquid that had already reverted to a spherical shape. She inserted several spells from the jade slip into it and carefully observed the changes within. She saw that the scarlet flame grass and the crimson pearl grass had reacted more intensely than before. This spell had the effect of promoting it. Zhang Xiaohua stroked her chin and formed a spell with her other hand, as if she wanted to discover something from within. After a long while, she sent the medicinal liquid into the furnace and walked out. This time, Valley Head Nie and Elder Zhang weren't as active as the previous two times. They presumably knew that no matter how fast they ran, Zhang Xiaohua wouldn't let them see anything from the pill furnace. Sure enough, the pill furnace, earth fire, and medicinal liquid were the same as before. Only the medicinal fragrance in the pill room was still faint. At this time, Nie Qianyu unconsciously frowned and asked softly, "Big Brother Ren, why is the medicinal fragrance different when you refine pills? I remember that some time ago, as long as you refine pills, the medicinal fragrance would assail our nostrils. But now," Elder Zhang and Valley Master Nie also suddenly came to a realization. They were only concerned about the process of refining the pill and had forgotten about this detail. Moreover, many ancient records did not even mention the medicinal fragrance. They only took it for granted that the medicinal fragrance had to be rich to be a truly good pill. Elder Zhang asked with concern, "Ren Xiaoxia, could it be that the technique is wrong?" Zhang Xiaohua had compared the martial Dao and immortal Dao's alchemy, and she had some insights in her heart. She smiled and said, "I don't know the reason behind it, but I vaguely feel that the medicinal fragrance is naturally emitted by the medicinal effects of the medicinal herbs. If the medicinal fragrance is emitted too much, will it reduce the medicinal effects? For example, if this medicinal herb is stored in an ordinary wooden box, the medicinal fragrance will be very strong no matter where it is placed. After a long time, it will lose its effect. Only when it is stored in a jade box, the medicinal fragrance will not leak out, and it can be maintained for a long time." Zhang Xiaohua did not tell them about the array outside the medicinal liquid and the 5 elements inside the pill. She only threw out this simple comparison, which could be considered as a simple explanation that was easy to understand. The other three were suddenly enlightened. This theory was really easy to understand, but why was it not written in the alchemy books? Sigh. Only Zhang Xiaohua, who had become a novice and completely relied on herself to fumble around, could have such an understanding. Nie Qianyu immediately asked. Then, according to Big Brother Run, the fainter the medicinal fragrance of the pill, the more effective it is? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and smiled. Except for pills that have been stored for a long time and have completely lost their medicinal effects. Nie Qianyu spat and said, "Of course I know this." Not long after, the entire alchemy room fell into a dead silence. Yes, even when faced with a pool of medicinal liquid, there was no gurgling, nothing could be seen and nothing could be understood, so how could there be any questions to ask? After a while, Valley Master Nye smiled and said, "Nephew Run, I still have some miscellaneous matters to attend to in the valley, so I won't be here to observe. Nephew Ren, please take care of it." After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands and left the alchemy room. After a while, Elder Zhang, who was originally the most enthusiastic, also wanted to give up. He muttered, "Young hero Run, I suddenly remembered that I haven't fed my big white yet. I reckon that it's hungry now. I have to hurry and take a look. You go ahead with your work. I'll come back tomorrow to take a look." After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands and ran away without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to speak. Nie Qianyu was the only one left. She looked at Zhang Xiaohua apologetically and silently accompanied her. However, after a while, Nie Qianyu's eyes became a little blurred as she looked at the medicinal liquid. Although she liked being with Zhang Xiaohua very much, she didn't dare to talk to Zhang Xiaohua when faced with this medicinal liquid that didn't change at all. She was afraid of disturbing him while he was refining pills, so how could she not feel sleepy? Upon seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua withdrew her divine sense from the alchemy furnace and asked softly, "What's going on? Little you, it's still early, so why are you daydreaming? If you want to do it, then just do it. Why are you alone in the alchemy room with me? How can I face those months of 3-character classic?" Nie Qianyu, who was originally in a daze, was suddenly teased out of her sleepiness. She spat and said, "It's broad daylight, so why are you talking about a man and a woman alone? I'll just rest here. Let's see who in the Rejuvenation Valley will say no." Zhang Xiaohua was startled and immediately gave her a thumbs up. She said with a smile, "You're indeed the second most powerful person in the Rejuvenation Valley. You're so impressive." Nie Qianyu's face was slightly red. She looked at the medicinal liquid that still didn't change in the alchemy furnace and asked, "Big Brother Ren, has it been like this for the past 10 days? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "Basically, it hasn't changed. There will only be some changes on the last day." "Then, we can't watch it on the last day, right?" Nie Qianyu asked very sharply. "That's right," Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation. "Alas," Nie Qianyu sighed and said, "Father and Elder Zhang will definitely regret it." Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and didn't answer. In any case, she had already made it clear before that no matter what, she couldn't let them see her using spells to control the alchemy furnace. Seeing that Nie Qianyu was somewhat unhappy, Zhang Xiaohua thought for a while and said, "Little fishy Nye, instead of being bored here and not being able to learn anything, why don't you go back and carefully comprehend the 5 elements Dine formation? That's a real thing. Once you learn it, you can use it to protect the Rejuvenation Valley. Haven't you always wanted to rely on your own strength to achieve results that would make others take notice of you? Isn't this the best opportunity?" Nie Qianyu's eyes lit up when she heard this. These words were exactly what she wanted to hear. Thus, she had long forgotten the whispered instructions from Elder Zhang and Valley Master Nye at the entrance of the alchemy room. She stood up and said, "Big Brother Rin, you're right. I'll bring that formation over now and comprehend it in your alchemy room. If there's anything I don't understand, you can immediately answer me." "What?" Zhang Xiaohua almost cried out. "Didn't I just want you to go back? Why do you really want to stay here overnight?" Zhang Xiaohua repeatedly waved her hand and said, "Little fishy Nye, you'd better comprehend it in your own room. I have to concentrate on refining pills here. If you have any questions, It won't be too late to find me after dinner. What do you think? But Nie Qinyu really wanted to say, Big brother run. The people from the fragrant religion are about to arrive. How many more days can you stay in the Rejuvenation Valley? I just want to spend more time with you. Unfortunately, she couldn't bring herself to say such naked words of love. She could only change her words and say, But, can I come over whenever I have a question? Zhang Xiaohua pinched his chin and said with a profound expression. The ancient said, Walk your own path and let others envy you. Although this formation is dead, you're alive. If you encounter a problem, it's best to think about it a few times. Perhaps you'll have your own ideas. You don't have to rely on other people's explanations. Thinking about it on your own is the most practical gain. Moreover, different people have different opinions on the path of formations. It is not necessarily conventional. If you accept it completely without thinking, you will not be able to develop it and surpass it. Alas, in short, he wanted Nie Qinyu to see and think more by herself. She shouldn't disturb him when he was refining pills. How could Nie Qinyu not understand? She only smiled sweetly and said, Big brother Ren is so talented. I'll definitely learn from you. I'll go back and comprehend it now. After she finished speaking, she rolled her eyes at Zhang Xiaohua and walked out of the pill room. After Nie Qinyu left, Zhang Xiaohua heaved a sigh of relief. This world was really peaceful. The feeling of no one watching was really good. Immediately, Zhang Xiaohua made a hand gesture and sent the medicinal liquid back to the center of the pill furnace. Then, he made a few more hand gestures and the entire medicinal liquid started to boil abnormally. After a long while, the medicinal liquid gradually calmed down. Zhang Xiaohua waved his hand and took the grass praying mat beside the bed. He sat cross-legged in front of the pill furnace and released a strand of divine sense to carefully observe the medicinal liquid in the pill furnace. He closed his eyes and prepared to comprehend the incantation of spirit traction. However, after Zhang Xiaohua closed his eyes, he felt as if something was missing, which made him feel uneasy. He frowned and opened his eyes. What greeted him was a few jade boxes beside the pill furnace. Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood. Of course, half of the scarlet fire grass and half of the crimson pearl grass had not been put into his money pouch. How could he be at ease? After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua took out 2 dark green jade boxes from his money pouch and placed the scarlet fire grass and crimson pearl grass on the table into the jade boxes. Then, he placed a restriction on them. Only then did he feel at ease. At this time, there were still many medicinal herbs on the table that were untouched. Zhang Xiaohua rolled his eyes and took out a few more jade boxes. He divided the remaining medicinal herbs into half and placed them into the jade boxes. Anyway, I've already told Valley Head Nye and Elder Zhang to leave half for me. I'm only taking them now because I'm afraid that the vitality in the medicinal herbs will dissipate. After doing all this, Zhang Xiaohua sat cross-legged again and calmed his heart to comprehend spirit traction. A day's time passed very quickly. Chapter 490. Dusk had fallen for a long time. Zhang Xiaohua stopped her cultivation and looked at the empty pill room with a smile. Elder Zhang's personality has changed? An entire day has passed, and he still hasn't come to see his precious crimson flame pill? Just as she was thinking, she heard footsteps. Without releasing her divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua knew that it was Nie Qinyu. When Nie Qinyu entered the alchemy room, Zhang Xiaohua deliberately looked behind her and said, Where's Elder Zhang? Uncle Nie? I haven't seen them for an entire day, and I miss them. Why haven't they come to see me refine pills? Nie Qinyu laughed out loud. You really want them to come? I'll go call them right now. Nie Qinyu also pretended to leave. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly said, Forget it, I'll just think about them. Uncle Nie still has the huge Rejuvenation Valley to take care of, and Elder Zhang still has the Handsome Dubai to take care of. There's no need for you to make another trip. Bah, Nie Qinyu sneered. Even if you want them to come, they may not come. Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to ask, Nie Qinyu said directly, Those who came and left after being scolded by you were asked to enter the elixir chamber one moment and leave the elixir chamber the next. They are all your elders. How can they still keep their dignity? If you let them watch from the pill room, they'll naturally come. Zhang Xiaohua came to a realization. She pointed at Nie Qinyu and laughed. Little fish Nie, you're trying to persuade them again. Did Elder Zhang go to look for you? Nie Qinyu covered her mouth and laughed. Looks like I can't hide anything from Big Brother in. Father and Elder Zhang both asked me to ask you. If you let them see something new in the future, they'll come. If it's just a pancake like medicinal liquid for 10 days, they won't come. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, then you should tell the two of them to come back on the last day. There won't be much change in the next 10 days. Nie Qinyu nodded and then asked a few more questions about the 5 elements Dine formation. She was inspired by Zhang Xiaohua and wanted to think about something of her own. However, there were too many things included in the immortal Tao formation. It was not easy to just accept them all. She had just come into contact with the formation, so how could she understand her own things? Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua answered all her questions without hesitation. Nie Qinyu's eyes sparkled as she listened to Zhang Xiaohua. Looking at Nie Qinyu's eyes, Zhang Xiaohua raised her little tail high and looked like a master. She said, I don't have much time left, little fishy. When I leave, where will you find another master like me? Why aren't you working hard to master it? If it was any other day, Nie Qinyu would have already scolded Zhang Xiaohua for being so arrogant. However, when she heard it now, she felt weak in her heart. She pursed her lips and did not say anything. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua had an indescribable feeling in her heart. She quickly picked up some common knowledge about the formation, including the 5 elements formation and the tripartite formation. She combined it with her own martial arts knowledge and tried her best to make Nie Qinyu understand and practice it on a daily basis. This gradually diverted Nie Qinyu's attention and made her listen more attentively. Nie Qinyu only left reluctantly when it was late at night. After Nie Qinyu left the inner valley, Zhang Xiaohua immediately restricted the alchemy room. She did not waste any time and continued to comprehend the heavenly Tao. Zhang Xiaohua did not think that she was wasting time by explaining formations to Nie Qinyu. First, Nie Qinyu's cultivation in martial arts was limited. If she could learn formations, she would have some ability to protect herself. This could be considered repaying Nie Qinyu's wisdom. Second, Zhang Xiaohua's formations were fumbled by herself based on jade slips and might not be completely correct. During the lecture, she could also comprehend or make up for new things. After a while, it was almost midnight. Zhang Xiaohua, who was sitting on the bed, suddenly opened her eyes. She frowned and released her divine sense from the alchemy room, directly sweeping outside Rejuvenation Valley. She saw several carriages and several horses carrying a group of people along the small path toward Rejuvenation Valley. Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled. Why were there still people coming? However, judging from their hurried but not surreptitious appearances, they didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards Rejuvenation Valley. Right at this moment, a guard dressed in martial attire scuttled out from the forest on the side of the path. He stood in the middle of the path and held a long spear in his hand, blocking the path of the carriages. The carriages all stopped. A young man dressed in martial attire, riding a white horse, stepped out of the crowd and walked towards a guard. Under the moonlight, Zhang Xiaohua could clearly see that it was Rejuvenation Valley's second son-in-law, the young gang master of the whale gang, Changsheng. When she saw this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't be bothered to look any further. She withdrew her divine sense. However, she found it strange. It was already the middle of the night. Why had Nie Qinyu brought her husband back to her parents' home? Ever since Zhang Xiaohua reached the peak of the early stage of qi condensation, her comprehension of the heavenly Tao had improved slightly. In particular, she'd made new gains in the past few days when she'd combined the incantation of spirit guidance with the heavenly Tao. It was very easy for her to merge her entire body into her surroundings. Even if she didn't release her divine sense, she could still reflect any abnormal movements within a certain radius into her mind. However, Nie Qianyu was Nie Qianyu's second older sister. When she returned to her parents' home, had nothing to do with Zhang Xiaohua. He naturally wouldn't pay her any attention. Moreover, the time to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra was about to arrive. Even if he wanted to pay her any attention, there was nothing he could do. Zhang Xiaohua stood up and floated over to the pill cauldron. She carefully examined the situation within the cauldron. She still felt a bit uneasy. Just as the recipe for the Meridian Soothing Pill in the Jade Slip had said, the Meridian Soothing Pill was only a low-level pill. She only needed to pay attention to the cauldron for a dozen or so days. She didn't need to pay attention to the temperature at all times. However, she had several hours between midnight and daybreak. She couldn't pay attention to anything at all. If she made a single mistake, all of her previous efforts would be wasted. Sigh, if only I had a child to look after the cauldron. Zhang Xiaohua, who was similar to an alchemy boy, couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Moreover, the image of a scabby kid appeared in his mind for no reason. It was actually Ji Xiaohua from Pining Town who had the same name as him. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile. She thought to herself, if I had a scabby-headed child to look after the cauldron, wouldn't I be laughed to death by others? Seeing that the time was about to arrive, Zhang Xiaohua didn't have time to let her imagination run wild. She concentrated and orderly injected some techniques into the cauldron and medicinal liquid. Then, she sat cross-legged on the cattail hassock in front of the cauldron. She took out 2 vitality stones from her bosom and closed her eyes to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra. Not long after, mysterious fluctuations surged from Zhang Xiaohua's body. Countless invisible starlight from the endless starry sky shone through the mountain walls of Rejuvenation Valley and directly shone around Zhang Xiaohua. Everything was no different from his nightly cultivation. However, although there was no difference in Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation today, there was a change in the medicinal liquid being nurtured in the cauldron in front of her. The essence of the scarlet firegrass and the essence of the crimson pearl grass in the medicinal liquid were interacting with each other like water and fire. They were constantly vibrating and rotating. Zhang Xiaohua was sitting in front of the cauldron. Her whole body was shrouded by the starlight, and the cauldron above the earth fire was inevitably enveloped as well. The starlight entered Zhang Xiaohua's body and also entered the rotating fusion of water and fire. The 2 essences that were still vibrating and seemed to be rejecting further fusion gradually accepted each other harmoniously after the starlight entered. The vibration of the medicinal liquid also gradually weakened and gradually calmed down as time passed. Moreover, due to the mysterious fluctuations surging from Zhang Xiaohua's body, these fluctuations caused the starlight around her to vibrate. The starlight in the medicinal liquid was also unavoidably affected. Therefore, the rotation of the medicinal liquid was also affected by these mysterious fluctuations. There were some slight changes in the rotation of the medicinal liquid. As a result, more flickering starlight was attracted into the medicinal liquid. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes and immediately looked into the cauldron. Following Zhang Xiaohua's awakening, the fluctuations on her body immediately disappeared. The starlight also immediately stopped projecting. Naturally, the starlight in the medicinal liquid also disappeared. However, the changes in the rotation of the medicinal liquid remained. It was a pity that these changes were too weak. Even when Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to observe carefully, she did not detect any changes at all. Not having any changes was the best result. Zhang Xiaohua heaved a sigh of relief. She stood up and used a few more hand seals to remove the restriction on the cauldron room. She then walked to the empty space in front of the cauldron room and started cultivating the Big Dipper magical fist. Although Zhang Xiaohua had already told Nie Qinyu yesterday to pass on the message to Valley Head Nie and Elder Zhang that there would not be any special changes in the 10 over days of refining the pills, so there was no need for them to come and observe. However, not long after Zhang Xiaohua returned to the cauldron room to comprehend the god's guidance, Valley Head Nie and Elder Zhang came over hand in hand. After greeting each other, the two of them could not wait to observe the medicinal liquid in the cauldron. They saw that the medicinal liquid was still at the bottom of the cauldron, and there was no change from yesterday. The two of them could not help but look at each other in dismay. Could it be that this medicinal liquid had been roasting at the bottom of the cauldron for 10 over days? What was the difference between this and one day? Of course, they understood in their hearts that there was definitely a difference. Otherwise, Zhang Xiaohua would not have stayed in this cauldron room for 10 over days. But the question was, what was the difference? Was it to refine the essence of the medicinal herbs? The two of them almost reached out a hand to grab Zhang Xiaohua's neck and make her say the reason. But looking at Zhang Xiaohua's smiling and closed mouth, they knew that this fellow was going to invite them out again. Sure enough, just as Zhang Xiaohua was about to open her mouth, Elder Zhang said with a smile, "Ren Xiaoxia, Big White caught a cold while looking after the medicinal herbs yesterday. Our rejuvenation valley is too big, and I can't manage it alone. I am relying on Big White to patrol here, so I have to take good care of it. I reckon that I won't be coming over for the next few days." The refinement of this crimson flame pill will all depend on Xiaoxia. Valley Master Nya also forced a smile and said, "I also have to deal with one matter after another in this valley. It seems that I won't be able to come over often. I will have to trouble my nephew with this matter." Valley Master Nya frowned deeply. These words seemed to be the truth. Zhang Xiaohua's heart also moved. Thinking of what she saw last night, she could not help but laugh secretly. Even an upright official finds it difficult to resolve family matters. This must be Rejuvenation Valley's own matter. Chapter 491. Zhang Xiaohua lowered her head and pretended to think. She then said solemnly, "If that's the case, then you two seniors can go about your business. There's no need for you to come over for the rest. How about I inform you after I've successfully refined the Crimson Flame Pill?" Valley Head Nya glanced at Elder Zhang and nodded. "That's the only way. Nephew, you've worked hard. If you need anything, just tell little you. All the medicinal herbs in Rejuvenation Valley will be at your disposal." Hearing the word medicinal herbs, Zhang Xiaohua pointed at the jade box on the table and said, "After a while, I will put the other medicinal herbs into the cauldron according to their weight. I will put away the remaining medicinal herbs first. What do you two think?" The two nodded and had no objections. This was something they had discussed beforehand. Zhang Xiaohua was just putting away first. After chatting for a while, Valley Head Nya and Elder Zhang were about to leave with conflicting emotions. Seeing Valley Head Nya frown, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of the fragrant religion. She immediately asked, "Uncle Nya, are the people from the fragrant religion about to arrive?" Valley Head Nya nodded and said, "It should be around this time. However, nephew, don't worry. This old man won't forget about your matter. I've already arranged everything properly. Even if the people from the fragrant religion come now, this old man will delay them until the Crimson Flame Pill is successfully refined." Zhang Xiaohua heard this and sighed. The Crimson Flame Pill can still be refined in the future. I don't want to push back the opportunity to go to the fragrant religion. I ask for Uncle Nye's understanding. Valley Head Nye looked at Elder Zhang and also nodded. This old man understands nephew's thoughts. Nephew, just focus on refining the pill. This old man will arrange everything. After speaking, the two cupped their hands and bid farewell. Zhang Xiaohua stood alone in front of the cauldron. Thinking of Valley Head Nye's expression just now, Zhang Xiaohua shook her head. She understood that Valley Head Nye was most concerned about this Crimson Flame Pill, but what she cared about was the opportunity to go to the Cult of Fragrance. If the people from the Cult of Fragrance were to come now, there would be an irreconcilable conflict between her request and Rejuvenation Valleys. She hoped that the people from the Cult of Fragrance would come a little later. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua, who had been waiting for people from the Fragrance Cult to come quickly, wanted to delay this moment. This day passed very peacefully. In the morning, Zhang Xiaohua threw the remaining medicinal ingredients into the pill furnace and controlled the temperature of the earth fire to slowly quench the impurities of the remaining medicinal ingredients. When it was close to noon, Zhang Xiaohua once again injected a series of complicated spells into the pill furnace. She observed the faint changes of the 5 elements in the pill furnace and officially entered the pill gestation stage. When it came to pill incubation, he only had to pay attention to the temperature of the earth fire and control the stability of the cauldron. There was nothing else to pay special attention to. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua took some time to separate a strand of consciousness to watch over the cauldron and began his usual cultivation. In the blink of an eye, nearly 10 days had passed. Valley Master Nie and Elder Zhang did not appear again. Only Nie Qinyu came to Zhang Xiaohua almost every night to ask questions about the 5 elements dye in formation. With the depth of her study, Nie Qinyu had already mastered the basics of this formation. It had to be said that Nie Qinyu, who did not have a good aptitude in martial arts, was still better than ordinary people when it came to the cultivation of formations. Therefore, when Zhang Xiaohua answered her questions, he slowly taught her some of the basic knowledge of formations and restrictions. Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation was even more remarkable. She had already begun to comprehend the cultivation concealment chan of God's guidance and had already achieved some small success. If there were no accidents, she would be able to achieve large success in a short period of time. At that time, Zhang Xiaohua would not attract the attention of the experts in the fragrant religion. After all, Zhang Xiaohua only went to the fragrant religion to look for Zhang Xiaohu and did not have any intention of causing trouble for the fragrant religion. However, Nie Qinyu's expression was the same as Valley Master Nie's. At first, it was just a frown, but recently, there was a slight worry on her face. Zhang Xiaohua originally decided not to ask, but in the end, he couldn't help but ask, "Little fishy Nie, 10 days ago, I saw Uncle Nie's worried face. You also seem to have something on your mind. I know this is a family matter of your Rejuvenation Valley. If there is anything I can help with, there is no harm in asking." Nie Qinyu forced a smile and said, "Alas, this matter." However, she only said the beginning and did not want to continue. She said, "It's nothing, Big Brother Run. This is purely a private matter of our Rejuvenation Valley. You can't help much. You should concentrate on refining the pills. It would be best if you finished refining before the people from the fragrant religion arrive. Otherwise, it will always..." In the end, there was another sentence that he didn't finish. Zhang Xiaohua knew that she was also afraid that the people from the fragrant religion would suddenly come and he would not be able to explain himself to the Rejuvenation Valley. He shrugged and said, "This matter can only depend on the heavens. I can only do my best." Alas, Nie Qinyu sighed and said, "But many things do not go according to one's wishes." Zhang Xiaohua's heart trembled, and he vaguely had a bad feeling. He immediately asked, "Could it be that the people from the fragrant religion have already arrived?" Nie Qinyu rolled her eyes and said reproachfully, "If the people from the fragrant religion came, even if Father did not tell you, would I not tell you?" Zhang Xiaohua said apologetically, "Little fish Nie, don't blame me. I was also anxious." Nie Qinyu waved her hand and said, "It's nothing, Big Brother Run. Don't worry. As long as the people from a fragrant religion come, and Father will tell you whether or not the Crimson Flame pill is refined. You don't have to worry." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and smiled. After a while, Nie Qinyu was obviously not in the mood to study. Zhang Xiaohua did not keep her and sent her out of the alchemy room. Not to mention that Zhang Xiaohua was still sitting cross-legged in front of the alchemy furnace. She did not make any gestures to inject the liquid into the furnace. After leaving the alchemy room, Nie Qinyu went out of the inner valley. She did not go to the Peach Blossom Temple, but went directly to the Huichun Hall. At this time, there were already many people sitting in the Huichun Hall. Valley Master Nie was sitting at the head of the table, expressionlessly sipping tea from time to time. On his left, the 2 disciples, Fei He and Mu Qingxian, were sitting upright with their heads bowed. They looked like clay bodhisattvas. On his right, the eldest daughter, Nie Qianrong, and her husband, Yu Zhonglin, were looking at each other, not knowing what to do. Their second daughter, Nie Qinxiu, and her husband, Chang Sheng, were slightly angry. They exchanged glances and glanced at Valley Master Nye from the corner of their eyes. Seeing Nye Qinyu enter the Huichun Hall, Valley Master Nye was surprised and smiled. "Little you, why are you back so early today?" Nye Qinyu looked at everyone and said, "Big Brother Ren is a little tired, so I came back early." After she finished speaking, she greeted everyone in the hall and casually sat down next to Mu Qingxian. Hearing Nye Qinyu's words, the anger on Changsheng's face became even stronger. He gave Nye Qinxiu a look. Nye Qinyu coughed and said to Valley Master Nye, "Father, wasn't this young man with the surname Ren fine? As long as he helped our Huichun Valley get through this difficult time, he would be kicked out. Why is he still staying in the valley after so long? Could it be that this guy changed his mind and Father couldn't kick him out because of your face? If Father doesn't want to be the bad guy, then I will go and explain it to him so that he doesn't have any bad ideas and leaves the valley as soon as possible." When Valley Master Nye heard this, he shook his head and said, "Nephew Rin is staying in the valley not because of your sister, but because of other important matters. You don't have to worry about it." "Nephew?" Nye Qinxiu sneered and said, "Since Father is calling him nephew, then have you investigated the background of this nephew? He is staying in our Huichun Valley for no reason and is even trying to build a relationship with us. Don't fall into his trap." When Nye Qinyu heard this, her face turned pale, and she said, "Second sister, Big Brother Ren has a chivalrous heart and didn't take advantage of our Huichun Valley. He just—" Nye Qinxiu interrupted her words and said, "Little you must not be bewitched by him and lose your usual intelligence. The bad men in this world like to play hard to get. He obviously has thousands of ideas for you, but you can't see through them and think that he doesn't care. Only when you take the bait will he reveal his ferocious face. I think this Ren is such a person. Even second sister, who has just met him a few times, can see your feelings for him. How can he not know? Since he has no interest in you and helped our Huichun Valley, we could just give him some elixirs and some gold, silver, and jewels. He could just come from afar. Why is he still staying in a valley to talk to you? This person must have an unspeakable plan in his heart." Nye Qinyu's face turned pale. When Yu Zhonglin heard this, he opened his mouth and was about to say something, but Nye Qianrong pulled his sleeve and shook her head. Yu Zhonglin was stunned and very puzzled. However, he saw Nye Qianrong constantly winking at him. So he looked back and saw Valley Master Nye's face was terrifyingly gloomy and showed signs of anger at any time. He immediately extinguished the thought of speaking and frowned as he watched Nye Qianxiu's performance. At this time, Changsheng coughed and stopped Nye Qianxiu from continuing. He smiled and said, "You said so much, but he is just an outsider. Little Yu is much smarter than us. How can she not know how to be careful? Moreover, father-in-law is also here. He will definitely not be deceived by this hypocrite." The word outsider was enunciated very clearly. When Nye Qianxiu heard this, she also smiled and said, "Husband, you are right. I am just afraid that our family will be taken advantage of. So I reminded little Yu that an outsider is an outsider and can't be completely trusted." Then she said to Nye Qianrong, "Do you think what little sister said is right?" "Big sister." Nye Qianrong was a little caught off guard and hurriedly said, "Second sister is right. Right. However, the specific problem needs to be analyzed in detail." After saying that, she shut her mouth and refused to say another word. Huichun Hall was silent for a while. Then they heard Changsheng say again, "Father-in-law, what do you think about the matter that I mentioned last time?" Chapter 492. A cold smile appeared on Valley Master Nye's face when he heard this. "Xiao Chong, I've already answered you about this matter several days ago. Do I still need to repeat myself?" An almost imperceptible trace of anger flashed through Changsheng's eyes, but his expression remained warm and genial. He said respectfully, "Father-in-law, please understand. This son-in-law of mine isn't making things difficult for you. Moreover, Changsheng isn't an outsider. He's a nephew I watched grow up. He can't practice martial arts, but he's a bit smart. If you don't help him, this child's future will be bleak." Valley Master Nye coldly snorted. The Whale Gang is a famous gang in the Jianghu. Your nephew only needs to find some work in a gang. Won't this be easily solved? Why go so far for what's near? When Yu Zhonglin heard this, he couldn't help but feel surprised. His father-in-law had always been kind and amiable. Whenever there was a problem with the Whale Gang, he would grant it. He wasn't stingy at all. Although Rejuvenation Valley's attitude towards the Whale Gang wasn't as good as Dear Cry Sex, they were all ordinary son-in-laws. Presumably, he wouldn't be stingy with Chang Sheng. What did Chang Sheng want his father-in-law to do for him to refuse again and again? Just as he was about to speak, Nie Qianrong tugged on his sleeve. When Yu Zhonglin looked over, he saw his wife shaking her head slightly. Chang Sheng glanced at Nie Qianxiu out of the corner of his eye, but didn't say anything else. Nie Qianxiu felt wronged. Father, Chang Sheng is also my nephew. He treats me with respect every day. He's a good person. Moreover, before I returned home, I already promised father-in-law that I would complete this matter for him. Look at the gifts I brought back. They're all gifts from the Whale Gang. Just give me some face and agree. Valley Master Nie didn't hesitate. He shook his head and said, if it were anything else, I would have agreed long ago. Even if you married into the Whale Gang, you're still my daughter. How could I not give you face? However, this matter is truly important. I can't ignore it. After that, he took a sip of tea and said, when you returned late that night, you told me about this matter early in the morning. At that time, I didn't immediately refuse. I only thought about it again and again. This involves the reputation of our Rejuvenation Valley, so I didn't dare to make a decision on my own. Seeing this, Nie Qianxiu turned her head to look at Mu Qingxian and Fei He. However, the two of them had remained silent ever since they entered the Rejuvenation Hall. They were completely focused on tasting the tea, as if they had never tasted such a wonderful tea before. Nie Qianrong had no choice but to turn her head to look at Nie Qianyu. Nie Qianyu was annoyed that she had scolded Zhang Xiaohua just now. She pouted and looked impatient. She did not look at her and just used her finger to draw something in the air. Nie Qianxiu thought that she was fooling around and was extremely angry. If Zhang Xiaohua was here, she would be able to see that Nie Qianyu was drawing the 5 elements die formation. The entire Rejuvenation Hall immediately fell into an awkward silence. Yu Zhonglin really couldn't take it anymore. After all, in this hall, only he and Chang Sheng had the role of son-in-law. If he didn't say anything at this time, he would lose out in terms of morality. As a result, he coughed and said that father-in-law, although the Whale Gang is a large sect, it is still the place where Chang Sheng grew up. If he only makes a living in one place, it is inevitable that he will have the mindset of a frog in a well. If he comes to Rejuvenation Valley, it can be considered as making up for his shortcomings and learning new skills. I feel that this is a good thing. Moreover, Chang Sheng also came to our Dear Cry sect with second sister 2 years ago. Valley Master Nie looked at his son-in-law and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Zhonglin, do you think that if Chang Sheng came to my Rejuvenation Valley, the Whale Gang would give me a carriage full of gifts? Do you think I'll reject you again and again? Yu Zhonglin was speechless. Nie Qianrong smiled and said, Father, please don't blame Zhonglin. He has good intentions and wants to help second sister. It's just that he doesn't know what's going on. However, your daughter is also confused. Valley Master Nie sighed. You just came back this afternoon. Naturally, you don't know the reason. Qinxiu and Chang Sheng are begging me for the same thing you begged me for 6 years ago. As soon as he finished speaking, Nie Qianrong and Yu Zhonglin's expressions changed slightly. They looked at each other and exchanged glances. They didn't say anything else. Valley Master Nie continued. If Changxing only came to my Rejuvenation Valley, I wouldn't have anything to say. I couldn't ask for anything more. However, just like Zhonglin's cousin, he wants to pass down the incense cult and try his luck. Do you think it's easy to be an alchemy boy? Not to mention that I haven't seen a single alchemy boy come back after so many years. If Chang Sheng goes, who knows when he'll be able to come back? Before he finished speaking, Chang Sheng said, Father-in-law, please don't worry about this. I already explained the situation to my father and brothers before coming here. They all feel that if he goes to the incense cult, there will naturally be other opportunities. It doesn't matter if he doesn't come back. If he can make a name for himself, he will be able to bring honor to his ancestors and raise the prestige of the Whale Gang. Valley Master Nya smiled bitterly. Not a single one of the alchemy boys sent by our Rejuvenation Valley has ever come back. Although we hear that they're doing very well in the incense cult, we don't see any living people. It's inevitable that there will be something wrong. Nya Chinchio was still unwilling. Father, you don't need to worry. We only agreed to send him to the incense cult. As for his fate, whether he comes back or not, it's not something we can control. Valley Master Nya scolded. Chinchio, you're being muddle-headed. Your husband's family's matters are our Rejuvenation Valley's matters. Changsheng is also our relative. This matter is clearly dangerous, and it's not like there are no other ways. Why do you insist on walking down this single-plank bridge? Father, your daughter has never asked you for anything in all these years. This is your daughter's request. You should just agree. Valley Master Nya still shook his head. There's one more thing. The incense cult has always maintained close ties with Rejuvenation Valley. They even strongly support our Rejuvenation Valley in the pugilistic world. However, we treat people sincerely. Every time they come to Rejuvenation Valley to pick people, we receive them with sincerity. We let them choose from the alchemy boys that we focus on nurturing. You have to know that the incense cult has made it clear that they only want alchemy boys trained by our Rejuvenation Valley. If I let Changsheng go forward, wouldn't it be cheating? Hearing this, Changsheng and Nya Chinchio's faces showed a trace of anger. However, they still endured and did not flare up. They only softly pleaded, Father, although Changsheng is not our alchemy boy, he is still Changsheng's nephew. We know him better than our alchemy boys. Jinjin is not an outsider. What is there to be worried about? The word outsider was clearly enunciated. Valley Master Nya shook his head. If I could make an exception, I would have made an exception for Zhonglin's cousin a few years ago. Why wait until now? You should think of another way. At this time, Nya Chinchio could not bear it anymore. She stood up. Father, it's not that I want to make things difficult for you. Since you want to take care of the alchemy boys, then don't include outsiders. You have to be fair. On one hand, you want to send an outsider to the incense cult as an alchemy boy. On the other hand, you keep denying the future of your own people. Do you think I don't have other thoughts? When Valley Master Nya heard this, his face also showed anger. He frowned and looked at Yu Zhonglin. Yu Zhonglin was shocked. He quickly said, Father-in-law, although this son-in-law also came to welcome the people from the incense cult, I just returned to the valley this afternoon. It was at this rejuvenation hall that I saw second sister and second brother-in-law. Nya Chinchio sneered. Father, there is no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. Since you want to send Ren Xiaoyao to the incense cult, then don't be afraid of others knowing. Then he glanced at Nya Chinyu, who was also surprised, and said, I thought there was something wrong with Ren Xiaoyao that day. Even if he helped him when he saw injustice, why didn't he leave when the matter was over? He just stayed in my Rejuvenation Valley and kept saying that he didn't need any repayment from us. I thought he was very noble. It turns out that he didn't care about the foundation of my Rejuvenation Valley at all. He had already made his plan. He turned out to be a super sect in Jianghu, the incense cult. Maybe he had already calculated this plan when he saved Little Yu. Maybe he was even sent by the enemy. Everything had already been arranged. Nya Chinyu said angrily, You second sister, how can you slander big brother in like this? He didn't even know what Rejuvenation Valley was that day. Nya Chinchio sneered. This is even more nonsense. Although my Rejuvenation Valley is not as famous as the incense cult in Jianghu, there must be a problem if a person in Jianghu hasn't even heard of Rejuvenation Valley. Little Yu, don't be blinded by others. Others have sold Rejuvenation Valley, and you still help them count the money. Shut up. Valley Master Nya was also furious. I know what kind of person Ren Xiaoxiao is. He has been in our Rejuvenation Valley for several months. If he has any bad conduct or intentions, how can we not see it? Moreover, your eldest senior brother and second senior brother have also been in contact with him. They have all praised him. Do you think we are all blind? Fei He and Mu Qingxian also heard that Zhang Xiaohua wanted to go to the incense cult for the first time. They were very surprised. However, when they heard their master mention it, they quickly nodded. Yes, this Ren Xiaoxia is indeed a magnanimous person. He is not what you think. Nie Qinxiu did not back down. You may know a person's face, but not his heart. I have only seen him once. However, from the fact that he wants to go to the incense cult, I know that his purpose in saving little you is not simple. Moreover, father, no matter what, Rin Xiaoyao is an outsider. He has not really married our family's little you. Since you can let him pretend to be an alchemy boy and enter the incense cult, why can't you help him and let him have a good future in the incense cult? Valley Master Nie sighed. AI, this is clearly different. Nie Qianxiu sneered again. What's the difference? He just wants to hug the incense cult's thigh and make plans for his future. Seeing that Valley Master Nie was still shaking his head, Nie Qianxiu gritted her teeth. If father doesn't agree, then no one will go. If you let that person go to the incense cult, then don't blame your daughter. Chapter 493. Valley Master Nie said angrily, "What do you want?" Nie Qianxiu also seemed to have shed all pretense of cordiality. She said, "Father, you naturally know your daughter's temperament. I never give up until I achieve my goals. If father only wants that bastard to go to the incense cult, then don't blame me for leaking information to the incense cult." When Valley Master Nie heard this, he didn't fly into a rage as Nie Qianxiu had imagined. He only smiled. I have no intention of hiding nephew Ren's identity. Even if the incense cult's emissaries find out about this, they won't blame us. Is that so, father? Nie Qianxiu smiled like a kitten. Father will definitely say that he is little Yu's future husband. With this identity, the incense cult naturally won't blame us. However, what if they find out that this husband is just a gimmick and has nothing to do with our little Yu? Right. What if it's a person of unknown origin? Valley Master Nie was finally enraged. He roared, "You dare? Why wouldn't I dare?" Nie Qianxiu raised her head. It's just a small favor. If father isn't even willing to help, I really don't have the face to return to the whale gang. Chang Sheng stood up at the right time and scolded, "Little Xiu, how can you speak to father like this?" He then bowed to Valley Master Nie and said, "Father-in-law, please don't blame her. Little Xiu's temper is like this. You know that she's just saying things out of anger. If the incense cult finds out about this, won't it become a big problem? At the very least, they'll cut off all ties with our Rejuvenation Valley. At the very least, they might even teach us a lesson. The incense cult's anger isn't something that our Rejuvenation Valley or the Jade Foundation Alliance can handle. Don't you think so, brother-in-law?" Yu Zhonglin was listening intently. When he was suddenly called, he was startled awake. Oh yes, brother-in-law is right. Nie Qinyu, who was sitting below her two senior brothers, also looked at her father with a worried expression. Second sister and brother-in-law were right. Letting Zhang Xiaohua into the incense cult was indeed risky. However, back then, she had thought that only Valley Master Nie, Yiyin, the Jade Foundation Alliance's leaders, and herself knew that Zhang Xiaohua was going to the incense cult. Therefore, there was no risk. However, she didn't expect that her second sister would return to the valley late at night a few days ago and say that she wanted to force her way into the incense cult to secure a bright future. This wasn't something that had never happened before. Recently, even brother-in-law Yu Zhonglin's cousin had been rejected by her father. However, she didn't expect her second sister to have such detailed information. For a moment, she didn't know how to persuade her. Valley Master Nie flew into a rage out of humiliation. He never thought that his daughter would fall out with him because of her in-laws. The idea of sending Zhang Xiaohua to the incense cult wasn't suggested by Zhang Xiaohua. She had only asked for the location of the incense cult's headquarters. Everything was arranged by Valley Master Nie and Yu Yan. Sigh, it was all Yu Yan's fault. Why did he think of sending her to the incense cult? However, when he thought about the influence that Zhang Xiaohua had on the Rejuvenation Valley in the past few months, Valley Master Nie couldn't help but secretly admire Yu Yan's arrangement. If it wasn't for the kindness of sending Zhang Xiaohua to the incense cult, would Zhang Xiaohua have given so many things to the Rejuvenation Valley? Alchemy techniques, the 5 elements dye formation, and the crimson flame pill that was being refined now. That was an elixir that could increase one's cultivation by 10 years. It was something that he couldn't even dream of. Sai, this second sister is too much. How did she get caught up in this wave? It's so easy to refuse this year, but Valley Master Nia was also speechless. What Zhang Xiaohua had done was a secret of the Rejuvenation Valley. Nie Qianrong and Nie Qianxiu were married people and naturally couldn't reveal it. However, if he didn't say it, how could they know that it was the Rejuvenation Valley's secret that allowed Zhang Xiaohua to go to the incense cult? Since he couldn't say it, and he had to let Zhang Xiaohua go, the only thing that Valley Master Nie could do was to compromise. However, looking at Nie Qianxiu's appearance, looking at Changsheng's appearance, then looking at Nie Qianrong and Yu Zhonglin, Valley Master Nie was in a dilemma. Firstly, his second daughter had married an outsider, but she was of the same mind as her husband's family and used his weakness to threaten him. It was unforgivable. Secondly, he had previously refused his eldest daughter and son-in-law, and now he had to agree to his second daughter's relatives going to the incense cult. It was a dilemma, an absolute dilemma. Yu Zhonglin looked at Nie Qianrong and gave her a look. Nie Qianrong coughed and said, "Father, Yin Qi's grandfather told us about this matter on the way back to the Dear Christ sect. He was afraid that we would have some thoughts if we knew about this matter. In fact, since this matter was discussed by his grandfather and father, how could we have other thoughts? The matter last time was also a matter of the Dear Christ sect. Since his grandfather didn't care, we naturally wouldn't care. His grandfather also said very clearly that this matter was of great importance and must not be spread out. We also took it to heart. Until today, we have never mentioned it again, let alone said a word to anyone else." Then she glanced at Nie Qianxiu and continued, "Moreover, this is a private matter of the Rejuvenation Valley. Your daughter is already married and does not dare to interfere with the matters of the valley. The reason I came back today is just like before, to show my face in front of the incense cult and let them know about the Dear Christ sect. I have no other thoughts. Father, you can make your own decision. I have no objections." Yu Zhonglin also smiled and said, "Father-in-law, Qianrong is speaking from our hearts. Before we came, Father also told us so. You don't have to worry about us." Sai, why is there such a big difference between people? They all have the same mother. Why do they look so different? Valley Master Nia was even more helpless. Seeing this, Changsheng immediately stood up and bowed. "Father-in-law, I am sorry for being presumptuous. This is the first time and also the last time. In the future, I will not trouble father-in-law with such a difficult matter." Nie Qianxiu also begged, "Father, please agree. This really is the last time." Valley Master Nia said helplessly, "Sai, you can leave for now. Let me think about it carefully." This was a tactful agreement. Other than Nie Qianxiu, Changsheng, and Nie Qianyu were all especially surprised. They didn't think that Valley Master Nia would yield to Nie Qianxiu and Changsheng for Zhang Xiaohua. What kind of charm did this Zhang Xiaohua have to make Valley Master Nia take such a big risk? Nie Qianyu wasn't surprised because she knew everything. She knew Zhang Xiaohua's importance and his use to Rejuvenation Valley. Nie Qianxiu and Changsheng weren't surprised because they knew that as long as Valley Master Nia allowed Zhang Xiaohua to spread the incense cult, they had no choice but to let Changsheng go. Otherwise, it would be a life and death struggle. This wasn't what Valley Master Nia wanted to see. However, Nie Qianxiu was still not satisfied. She hurriedly said, "Father, what are you still thinking about? The messenger of the incense cult arrived in Sorrow City yesterday. Maybe he's coming to Rejuvenation Valley now. If you hesitate, the cucumber will be cold." It had to be said that Nie Qianxiu was still a little too anxious. The old man had already acquiesced. Couldn't she give him a way out? Changsheng hurriedly scolded, "Qianxiu, how can you speak to father like that? Hurry and apologize to father." Valley Master Nia was so angry that he laughed. "It seems that you're really considerate. You even pay attention to the movements of the messenger of the incense cult. It's rare. If you use this effort on the development of the gang, you may benefit a lot. Chinchio seemed to know that she was too anxious. She explained, "Father, don't blame me. I already promised father-in-law before I came. I'm afraid that I'll lose face. That's why I'm anxious," Valley Master Nye sneered. "If you're afraid of losing face, then what about other people's faces? Also, how can a movement to the messenger of the incense cult be known by us? I advise you not to overestimate yourself. Otherwise, if you get into trouble, no one can help you. Even if father helps you this time, he may not be able to help you next time." Hearing this, Nye Chinchio was pleasantly surprised. "Father, you agree?" Almost everyone present wanted to cover their faces. He had already said this much, but she still didn't understand. This IQ. Chong Sheng pulled Nye Chinchio's sleeve and stood up again. He bowed and said, "Thank you, father-in-law." This guy's etiquette tonight was almost more than a year. Valley Master Nye glared at them and snorted. He stood up and entered the inner hall. Seeing their master leave, Fei He and Mu Qingxian immediately stood up and cupped their hands to everyone. They turned and left the rejuvenation hall. Tonight's matter was not so much the rejuvenation valley's matter, but rather the valley master's private matter. Nye Qingyu also stood up. Her face was very gloomy. She looked at her second sister from the corner of her eyes. She felt like she didn't recognize her anymore. She nodded to her eldest sister and brother-in-law and went to catch up with Valley Master Nye. Nye Qinrong stood up and looked at her second sister. She wanted to say something, but stopped. She looked at Yu Zhonglin. They both shook their heads and left the rejuvenation hall hand in hand. Chong Sheng seemed to be happy that his wish had been fulfilled, but he was also worried about offending his father-in-law. He looked at Nye Chinchio, who was still somewhat unwilling, and reproached her. "You're usually so smart. Why are you so reckless today?" Nye Chinchio sneered. "Look at father's attitude today. It's obviously different from how he treated eldest sister and little you. If I don't fight for it, when will I be able to complete your father's task? But father-in-law has already agreed. You should have just given him a way out. Why force him to make a decision? You don't know this. Although father has agreed, little you just needs to say a bunch of nonsense in front of him. My efforts tonight will all be in vain. When the incense cult's emissary comes tomorrow, he just needs to say he doesn't agree. What else can we say? What, you can't what? Aren't I doing this for the good of Rejuvenation Valley and our whale gang? It's just that father is stubborn. In the future, he'll definitely thank us. Forget it. Let's not talk too much here. Let's go back inside." The two looked at the silent inner hall and stood up to leave. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.